package. He's facing opposition from some members of his own party, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who has told left-wing Democrats to vote against the infrastructure proposal. At the White House, Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
The president has been clear about his commitment to getting both pieces of legislation passed, both of them through. So right now what we're navigating through and we're working through is how we can get agreement, of course, 50 votes in the Senate on a reconciliation package. That's what we're discussing here. We have to see what senators are comfortable with and if everybody involved is comfortable with it to get enough votes to get it across the finish line. And ultimately, our objective here is to work towards unity, work towards an agreement. That's in process.
The Old Bailey in London has heard that Sarah Everard, the 33-year-old marketing executive whose murder shocked the UK, believed that she was being arrested by her killer. Police officer Wayne Cousins, facing sentencing for murder, used his Metropolitan Police identity badge to abduct her, accusing her of breaching COVID-19 regulations. Lawyer Harriet Wistrich is the director of the Centre for Women's Justice.
There needs to be radical change. We've seen the government making various comments and pledges, and we have seen the police recognising also the horror, but we still have a huge problem in relation to misogyny and violence against women generally, and the failure of the criminal justice system to tackle those problems.
Japan is getting a new Prime Minister. Former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida won his ruling LDP's leadership election. FSN's Phoebe Amoroso in our Tokyo bureau says Mr. Kishida is going to have his hands full.
The number one priority will absolutely be how to restart socio-economic activities after the pandemic. Now, no part of Japan is under a state of emergency or quasi-state of emergency. He's offered a stimulus package worth around 30 trillion yen. He also says that he would not raise the sales tax, which is at 10%, for about a decade, as this would put too much of a burden on people.
Another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct by US officials. Scientists are warning of an extinction crisis, with flora and fauna now disappearing at 1,000 times the normal historical rate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, climate change activist Greta Thunberg's evisceration of US President Joe Biden, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and other world leaders in a speech designed to pave the way for the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow later this year. She was speaking at the Youth for Climate conference in Milan and said there have been far too many promises made and far too little progress delivered on the path to combating climate change.
This is not about some expensive, politically correct green act of bunny hugging or blah blah blah. Build back better, blah blah blah. Green economy, blah blah blah. Net zero, blah blah blah. Climate neutral, blah blah blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but so far has led to no action. Our hopes and dreams drown in their empty words and promises. Of course, we need constructive dialogue, but they've now had 30 years of blah, 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 and where has that led us?
Milan summit designed to allow a younger generation of activists to communicate directly with policymakers. Some of the ideas they're hammering out together are expected to make it on to the COP26 agenda. Alok Sharma, the president of COP26, appointed by Prime Minister Boris Johnson, evinced no emotion as he watched Greta Thunberg deliver her critique. The main news again, the threat of a US government shutdown is receding after Democrats and Republicans struck a deal that could see votes taking place in Congress later on Wednesday. President Biden is trying to secure the passage of two mainstays of his legislative agenda amid opposition from some of his fellow Democrats, and another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
Citing their effortless physical strength, affability, and notable base tans, reports from the country's pools, lakes, and beaches have indicated that once again, the nation's Blakes coasted effortlessly through this year's seasonal lifeguard tryouts. Onion reporters spoke with Cincinnati Centennial Pool's manager, Charles Walker, about the exceptional performance of his Blakes.
We always see strong performances from Blakes, but this year's crop did especially well. Blake D did the 25-yard underwater swim in 86 seconds. Blake S and Blake C both carried subjects 40 yards without breaking a sweat.
In addition to qualifying as pool managers and certified aquatics instructors, the nation's Blakes significantly outshined the nation's stewards in swimming, performing CPR, diving, and glistening.
I'm definitely looking forward to being a lifeguard this summer. I heard the test was kind of hard, but it was actually kind of easy.
Our Kaylas are looking pretty strong too. As long as we have a few Blakes and Kaylas out there on the weekends, we'll be set.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, and as always, you're invited to join the discussions that we're going to be having tonight. You can talk about what we're going to be discussing or whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line to do that. 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria,
Riley,
and Nikki.
And for those who don't know, Riley is on the show generally once or twice a year. You managed to make your way up to New Hampshire. You're the person responsible for creating the FTL Digest that we have on our SoundCloud account.
That's right, I am. This is my annual trip back to New Hampshire. I'm happy to be back. I feel like I'm home again. This is really nice to be here. I feel like I am back where I belong.
It is good to see you again. Did we ever actually make the effort to get you to drive a vehicle?
No, we need to do that while I'm here.
How long are you going to be here?
I'm going to be here until October 9th.
Oh, that is plenty of time then. We're going to get you to drive a vehicle.
Heck yeah, dude. Awesome. I'm looking forward to it.
I also have a friend who's a pilot. We could probably get you to fly a plane too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we probably could, honestly.
I'd love that. I'd love to try that.
I'm going to have to look into that for sure.
Okay. Great.
So Nikki has a story about a new world religion. I've got stuff about YouTube, and they're updating their terms. They're no longer just removing content that's against the COVID-19 vaccination, but all vaccinations in general. And of course, cops are being silly again and warning parents about people giving away edibles for Halloween.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, nobody's going to give your kids free drugs.
Yeah, I wouldn't give away free edibles if I had any.
No, it's absolutely not going to happen. But I want to start with this story about health workers, once saluted as heroes, are now getting threats. Coming to us from Omaha, more than a year after U.S. healthcare workers on the front lines against COVID-19 were saluted as heroes with nightly clapping from windows and balconies. Good God, I'm glad I never saw any of that.
I forgot about that. They were doing that in Italy and like a lot of like other big cities. They would have like an 8 p.m. clap and cheer section for the nurses and doctors.
It's really interesting. Like we're dealing with a pandemic, and we're cheering for these nurses, and now they're getting fired because they're not getting vaccinated.
It is interesting. That was one of the things I pointed out during Louder Than Life as well. It's the pandemic. If there, ever really it was a pandemic, it didn't end. Americans just sort of got sick of it and went back to our lives, as far as I can tell.
I don't know. I mean, I hear that there was a pandemic, and I'm going to go with that story. But that being said, all this talk about how nurses are heroes and then treating them like villains because they choose not to get certain drugs injected into them because they have their own personal concerns is ridiculous.
Yeah, and they're healthcare workers, right? So if anyone has a right to be concerned about healthcare things, it would be healthcare workers.
And it's not like these reservations about the vaccination are unwarranted. I mean, a lot of us are against it because we're literally seeing an influx of patients coming in with all of these cardiovascular issues days after they get the second dose.
So,
I mean,
Nikki,
I've seen...
You're a nurse, right?
Yes, I am.
And how many patients have you seen that have come in with these problems with the second dose of their vaccine?
Dozens.
Really?
And
none of them
have been legitimately reported to VAERS.
And that's because they make reporting to VAERS unnecessarily complicated, right?
And not just that, you're considered unvaccinated until 14 days after your second dose. So most of the side effects we're seeing are with like 2 days, 1 week, right after the second dose. I don't know, the first dose, we're not seeing that much really bad adverse reactions, but something about that second dose, once people get that second dose, it's like 2 days they'll have a blood clot, 2 days they'll have a seizure or pulmonary embolism or DVT or, all of these different things.
So my question is, how prevalent are these problems after the second dose? Because I know people who've had the second dose who haven't had these problems.
I don't know anyone who has had these problems, at least as far as they're aware, but who knows, they could develop blood clots tomorrow or something like that. And, having been vaccinated 6 months ago, they probably wouldn't make the connection, and their doctors probably wouldn't make the connection, and thus it wouldn't get reported to VAERS.
Unfortunately, I think the majority are not experiencing these issues, but every other vaccination or medication has been tested for like 10 or 20 years before it's released to the market. And for some reason, this one was tested for less than 6 months and it's being shoved down everyone's throats. It is impossible for us to know the long-term side effects of this experimental gene therapy or whatever it is.
I don't know enough about the mRNA shots or the Pfizer and Moderna shots because I haven't looked into them, but I don't want to hold off and say that these are bad to put in your body. The thing to say that I don't know is I just don't know what's in these mRNA vaccines, and I don't know what the long-term effects are like you said, Nikki. I don't know what the long-term effects are going to be. How long?
I can imagine, they just have standard vaccine stuff in them, and that's fine. My concern is that, we don't know what they're going to do further down the road. However, I do know what COVID-19 is going to do to me, because I've had it and I recovered. I was sick for like a day and I lost my sense of taste and smell for like 6 or 7 weeks, way longer than most people do. And then everything was fine and I was back to normal. I see no reason to take any additional risk when I know for a fact that the thing it's supposed to protect me from is not a threat to me.
But the problem, Arya, is this isn't about you. At least that's what we're told. The vaccine isn't about you. It's protecting the other people around you.
Well, if they're vaccinated, they'll be fine, right?
Yeah, you would think.
That's what I would think, too. And that concerns me that here we have, this rhetoric has never happened during the flu shot. And people get the flu shots all the time.
Yeah.
And we've never heard people say that, hey, you've got to get this flu shot to protect me.
Plus, as far as the evidence suggests, I'm immune to COVID-19 at the time because I've had COVID-19. And maybe that natural immunity will wane at some point, just as it does with, the common flu. I don't know.
But so could the immunity you get from the shot.
And the shots certainly are waning.
Sure. And you have to, I know the FDA has said that certain people should get boosters now.
Yes, they have. Biden got his booster recently, so... apparently some people are saying they're not going to get a third shot. They're like, no, I jumped through all of your hoops. I did everything you said. You said we could go back to normal, and we're still not going back to normal. I'm not getting any more shots because you're lying to us.
I have a hard time believing that if people bought into it the first time around, if they were able to, get coerced into, because they were threatening to fire people.
They still are.
I just met a man today that he needs a kidney transplant. And they didn't take him off the list, but they so if he's still on the list, but if he gets to the top of the list and he's not vaccinated, they skip him. And they'll keep skipping him until he gets the vaccine.
I think a lot of people want that to happen. I think a lot of people say, if you're not vaccinated, you should not be treated anymore.
A lot of people are saying that, and they're calling it, it's not messed up, it's just triage. But there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever to suggest that the vaccine is actually doing anything to prevent COVID-19 or to prevent deadly symptoms. Despite what people like to claim, the chances that COVID-19 was going to kill your average unvaccinated 35-year-old are extremely low.
Yeah.
Whether they're vaccinated or unvaccinated, COVID-19 just isn't likely to kill them. So they get vaccinated, then they go out there and they catch COVID-19 and they're written down as, oh, this is proof that the vaccine works. No, it's proof that COVID-19 was never a threat to them.
Yeah, and I'm still a firm believer that all of the people who were hospitalized had COVID or they had such bad results from getting COVID, they were so sick because of the medications that they were given in the hospital. They are still giving people remdesivir to this day, and we know that remdesivir causes kidney failure, hypotension, and multi-system organ failure, and they just are ignoring that, and they're letting people die. They're literally murdering all of these people, and I'm still seeing it. There was a man the other day at my hospital who, I don't normally treat COVID patients, but this man was on some sort of medication that he needed to be on the cardiac floor. And I saw in his medication list that he was, in fact, being treated with remdesivir.
So how do we know that remdesivir is causing these side effects? Where can we go look at this information?
The NIH.
The NIH?
The NIH, they did a study. It was for Ebola. There was 4 medications that they used. 2 of the medications were experimental medications put out by Anthony Fauci, one of which was remdesivir. They had to take remdesivir off of the trial after 2 weeks because it was so deadly.
So Fauci invented remdesivir, or was responsible for it?
Or he was promoting it, yeah.
I'm not shocked to hear that. When we get back, we're going to talk more about this and how across the countries, doctors and nurses are dealing with hostility, threats, and violence from patients who are angry that they're not vaccinated. 603-283-6160. That's coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments around the world killing innocent people? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin is money that cannot be inflated or controlled by any state. By continuing to use their money, you're perpetuating the killing. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available to you now. Learn it, use it, spread it.
Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. It's Bitcoin.com. Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When a lunar observatory detects a radio broadcast originating from Proxima Centauri, the nations of Earth discover their first contact with an alien race may also be their last. With the Proximans facing an extinction-level disaster, Earth must choose between sending a ship on a multi-year journey or allowing nature to take its course. Saving Proxima, a hard science fiction thriller by Travis S. Taylor and Les Johnson from BaneBooks.com.
Free Talk Live.
Some people actually need laws to know what the hell to do.
I don't think that's true. No, I have to disagree with you. There's only one law that people need to know, and that is do no harm. As long as you aren't hurting other people or stealing their stuff or damaging their property, then you are being law-abiding, because that's the one great natural law as far as I'm concerned. That's what, in fact, when they say, well, you know how they love to say this in court, ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, that phrase came about when that was the law, when that was pretty much the only concept you had to get, was that you don't hurt other people. Get it? Ignorance of that law, there's no excuse to ignore that law. That makes sense. But to say that ignorance of all these tomes and tomes and tomes of legislation that we have out there, that there's no excuse for that, of course there's an excuse.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern, live on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get 1 free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where we've had our video archives for years on Library, because Library is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we've been big fans of it pretty much since we've heard about it. I think it was 2016 when I first heard about Library, and I immediately fell in love with it. They've since launched Odyssey, which is a video sharing website that's meant to compete with YouTube, because YouTube is in a hurry to make itself obsolete by banning any sort of content that it doesn't like. Odyssey, on the other hand, doesn't censor you, and it now has more than 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. And if you are a YouTube creator, there's really no reason not to be on Odyssey, considering you can just click a few buttons and have all of your YouTube videos automatically moved onto Library, and that you can also simultaneously stream there. It's really simple. There's no reason not to do it. You can watch our channel at video.freetalklive.com. That's video.freetalklive.com. Or if you really want to go all in, download the desktop app at library.com. And then every video you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. So check out our channel at video.freetalklive.com. That's video.freetalklive.com. Now, with you tonight, it's Aria, Nikki, and Riley, and we're talking about healthcare workers here. Because I remember, and some of these signs still exist, there was nothing more cringy last year that I saw than driving around Keene and seeing these stupid signs that said, like, heroes work here.
Aria, come on. Don't you want these people to be called heroes, though? I mean, here you are. You work in the health. You don't work in healthcare, Aria, but you do work at a pizza restaurant, and here you are being an essential worker preparing pizzas for people to eat. Don't you want to be called a hero?
No, and I would quit my job on the spot if they put one of those signs outside.
Wow.
At the nursing home I was working at in the beginning of COVID, they had a Heroes Work Here sign, and it was just like so ironic. And I think like everybody that worked there was like on the same page as me. It was super cringy because we were being treated so horribly. Like we were working
overworked, underpaid, I imagine.
Yeah, overworked, underpaid, like working in these awful conditions, like it was just terrible. Everybody was miserable there.
Congratulations, you're a hero now.
Yeah, they're like, here's just like a Band-Aid to put on that issue.
Dr. Stu Kaufman generally agrees. He's a Dallas-based emergency room physician. He says, a year ago, we're healthcare heroes and everybody's clapping for us. And now we're being, in some areas, harassed and disbelieved and ridiculed for what we're trying to do, which is just depressing and frustrating. Cox Medical Center Branson in Missouri started giving panic buttons to up to 400 nurses and other employees after assaults per year tripled between 2019 and 2020. One nurse had to get her shoulder x-rayed after an attack. So this actually isn't from healthcare hero to villain because they're refusing to get vaccinated. It's just because patients seem to be losing their minds.
I've been physically assaulted more times in my life over the past year than I ever have in my life.
And it's by patients?
Yeah.
What's wrong with them? Are they just...
most of them are withdrawing off of alcohol or like opiates or something. But
that's got to be challenging.
Yeah, it is pretty challenging. Like I've had grown men like punch me in the face, kick me. It's pretty rough.
That sounds rough. That sounds very traumatic. I'm sorry that's happening to you.
Yeah, and they're wondering why they have such low census, you know.
Some hospitals have limited the number of public entrances. In Idaho, nurses said they are scared to go to the grocery store unless they have changed out of their scrubs so that they aren't accosted by angry residents. This is all very weird to me.
So I've heard about that too. A lot of nurses, because in the beginning of COVID, everybody was like so scared and they thought that the nurses were contaminated and that their scrubs like still had COVID on it and that it was going to kill everybody.
I heard a story. But they were heroes.
I heard a story of a nurse that got somebody spit in her face at the grocery store, and she was like, "Get out of here."
Wow.
Yeah, this was like in the very beginning of COVID. I was hearing a lot of these stories. Not so much anymore, but even so, it's like we have this so-called deadly virus, and these people are working on the front lines, and that's some thanks, you know?
Well, the virus is deadly for certain people, for sure.
It is, but so is the flu and pneumonia. Doctors and nurses at an Idaho hospital have been accused of killing patients by grieving family members who don't believe that COVID-19 is real, said one hospital spokeswoman. Others have been the subject of hurtful rumors spread by people angry about the pandemic. Our healthcare workers are almost feeling like Vietnam veterans scared to go into the community after a shift, said a representative of their hospital.
I think that's a little dramatic.
That did seem a little dramatic. It's someone spitting in your face. It's not quite like Vietnam, but
no,
okay.
It's really not. I mean, you're not. I mean, the nurses aren't actually killing people and killing babies. They just have to watch people die who are dying of an illness.
Yeah, and that's part of the job. I mean, we watch people die from all sorts of stuff every day. I mean, it's terrible, but like that's what it is. That's part of the job.
Over Labor Day weekend in Colorado, a passerby threw an unidentified liquid at a nurse working at a mobile vaccine clinic in Denver. Another person in a pickup truck ran over and destroyed signs put up around the clinic's tent. This is so foreign to me. That why are people so angry at nurses and doctors?
So I think the big thing is anger is one of these emotions that comes from fear and also not feeling like they're being seen and heard. So something is going on where people aren't feeling seen and they're not feeling heard. And
Excellent
it's concerning to me because, you know, we're living in a time where everyone's battling with each other. Everyone's warring over COVID. Everyone's worrying over this and that. And it's so silly that here we are battling out in the streets. It's like slave-on-slave violence.
Across the U.S., the COVID-19 crisis has caused people to behave badly toward one another in a multitude of ways. Well, shocking when you have the media telling the entire society that every single person out there is trying to kill them because not even trying to kill them, but could potentially kill them. They could spread this deadly, deadly disease. People are going to start behaving badly toward one another. That's an obvious result of telling people that, hey, that person, he could kill you.
And that comes from fear. And that definitely comes from fear. When you make everyone live in fear of each other, they're going to get angry and they're going to get violence.
Absolutely. Several people have been shot to death in disputes over masks in stores and other public places. Shouting matches and scuffles have broken out at school board meetings. A brawl erupted earlier this month at a New York City restaurant over its requirement that customers show proof of vaccination. Violence has always been a problem in the emergency department, said one emergency room physician, but the situation has gotten worse in recent months. The doctor said that he's been pushed up against a wall and has seen nurses kicked. It's a mess out there. Coggins said a patient told her that he wanted to strangle President Biden for pushing for vaccinations, prompting her to change the subject. She said security guards are now in charge of enforcing mask rules for hospital visitors so that nurses no longer have to be the ones to tell people to leave.
Where is this going on?
In several places. That
it doesn't say specifically?
Well, that most recent one was Montana.
Okay.
Montana's a small state. I didn't think Montana would have such violent people.
The hostility is making an already stressful job harder. Many places are suffering severe staffing shortages, in part because nurses have become burned out and quit. I have a good solution for these nursing staff shortages. Require them all to get a vaccine, even though 20% of them aren't going to do it, and then you'll have to fire them, and you'll have to make that staffing shortage even worse.
Yep.
Absolutely stupid. If you have to fight with somebody about wearing a mask, or if you aren't allowed to visit, and we have to argue about that, that is stressful.
It is stressful.
It is. So the healthcare industry screwed, not going to get any better anytime soon. There's also a supply chain issue. We're looking at quite possibly a full societal collapse if they don't get the supply lines moving again. And it remains to be seen whether or not they even can. 603-283-6160. That and more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
Free Talk Live's video archives have been on LBRY for years. LBRY is an uncensorable, decentralized, blockchain-based media sharing protocol, and we're big fans of it here on Free Talk Live. In 2020, LBRY launched Odyssey, a video sharing website to compete with YouTube, and it's really taking off. Now with over 1 million channels, many of whom are disaffected YouTube creators. During YouTube's crackdown for not towing the government line on COVID, the Free Talk Live YouTube channel started receiving strikes and could be completely taken down at any moment. thankfully, Odyssey started offering live streaming, so we're now streaming live every night and posting our video archives permanently to Odyssey. You can watch live or anytime on our Odyssey channel by visiting video.freetalklive.com. If you want to go all in, download the desktop app at lbry.com, and then every video archive you watch, you'll help seed and keep it online forever. At minimum, we ask you visit video.freetalklive.com and follow us on Odyssey today. video.freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The threat of a U.S. government shutdown later this week is receding after Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill struck a deal that could see votes taking place in Congress later on Wednesday. Meanwhile, President Biden is working overtime in a bid to try and secure the passage of two mainstays of his legislative agenda, a $1.2 trillion infrastructure deal and a broader spending package. He's facing opposition from some members of his own party, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who has told left-wing Democrats to vote against the infrastructure proposal. At the White House, Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
The president has been clear about his commitment to getting both pieces of legislation passed, both of them through. So right now what we're navigating through and we're working through is how we can get agreement, of course, 50 votes in the Senate on a reconciliation package. That's what we're discussing here. We have to see what senators are comfortable with and if everybody involved is comfortable with it to get enough votes to get it across the finish line. And ultimately, our objective here is to work towards unity, work towards an agreement. That's in process.
The Old Bailey in London has heard that Sarah Everard, the 33-year-old marketing executive whose murder shocked the UK, believed that she was being arrested by her killer. Police officer Wayne Cousins, facing sentencing for murder, used his Metropolitan Police identity badge to abduct her, accusing her of breaching COVID-19 regulations. Lawyer Harriet Wistrich is the director of the Centre for Women's Justice.
There needs to be radical change. We've seen the government making various comments and pledges, and we have seen the police recognising also the horror, but we still have a huge problem in relation to misogyny and violence against women generally, and the failure of the criminal justice system to tackle those problems.
Japan is getting a new prime minister. Former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida won his ruling LDP's leadership election. FSN's Phoebe Amoroso in our Tokyo bureau says Mr. Kishida is going to have his hands full.
The number one priority will absolutely be how to restart socioeconomic activities after the pandemic. Now, no part of Japan is under a state of emergency or quasi-state of emergency. He's offered a stimulus package worth around 30 trillion yen. He also says that he would not raise the sales tax, which is at 10%, for about a decade, as this would put too much of a burden on people.
Another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct by US officials. Scientists are warning of an extinction crisis, with flora and fauna now disappearing at 1,000 times the normal historical rate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You're invited to join us. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line if you want to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And I want to say thank you to Aaron, who was yesterday's amplifier. That means Aaron is a member of the AMP program. Aaron is actually a platinum member, which means that Aaron is giving $25 or more per month to the AMP program. You can find it at amp.freetalklive.com. It's amp.freetalklive.com. It's money that is used strictly to advertise, market, and promote Free Talk Live. And I actually don't know why I'm actually bothering to still promote the AMP program, because it's about changes are on the way and the AMP program is transitioning to a different thing. Right now, you can't even pay with the card. So it's all messed up and it doesn't look like it's going to get fixed anytime soon. But you can still join with the other options that are available, like PayPal and, of course, cryptocurrency. Anyway, I want to say thank you to Aaron for that. amp.freetalklive.com. If you like the show and you want to help us reach a larger audience, then that's the way to go. amp.freetalklive.com. Now, I have an update here. I just saw it. It actually just released today as well. An update on the process to get a constitutional amendment on the ballot. And this is coming from nhexit.us ultimately. A couple of weeks ago, Liberty State Representative Mike Sylvia filed his proposed constitutional amendment with Legislative Services, which is a governmental bureaucracy that reviews all proposed bills filed by the senators and state reps. 2 weeks later, they returned to him the officially drafted CACR, or Constitutional Amendment Concurrent Resolution. Sylvia's proposed amendment wording was untouched, which is shocking to me because Legislative Services, they can gut these things if they want to, but they chose not to do that here. And in the Voter's Guide, they added an excellent summary that's quoted here. At the present time, New Hampshire exists as a sovereign state of the United States of America. That there are all sorts of contradictions in that. You're not a sovereign state if you're a member of a larger organization that ultimately has control over you.
No, you're not. You're generally part of that organization. You're not a sovereign state.
Yes. If the amendment is adopted, New Hampshire will peaceably declare independence from the United States of America and proceed as its own sovereign nation. And in that case, the sovereign word actually applies. That should make it clear to voters what this amendment will do should it make it to the ballot. The next step is Sylvia must get his co-sponsors to sign on. He recently reported that he has several other reps who have told him they would like to co-sponsor, which is good. Presumably, the more co-sponsors you have to something, the better it looks to a committee. I don't know. He must submit the co-sponsors and any final changes by October the 7th, which is next Friday, and in like 3 days after the primaries here in New Hampshire. I think the primaries happen nationwide on the same date. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they do, I believe.
Then Legislative Services will assign a number to the bill, so it will be CACRX, where X is whatever number they assign, and it will next be officially set for a committee hearing in early 2022. We don't have a date for that yet, but once we get to that point, it's going to be very important for people to actually come out to the committee, speak in front of them, and share your thoughts on this bill. You can find out more about this and stay up to date on it at nhexit.us. That's nhexit.us. Now, Nikki, you had a story, and I don't remember which one of these it actually was. Oh, home births and COVID-19. Yes. Because this is something that you do, right?
I do.
What is it exactly that you're training to be a midwife? Is
Yes,
that correct?
yes, I'm training to be a home birth midwife. So I'm a student midwife, and I am also a practicing doula. So the difference between doula and midwife, just really quick, doulas are a supportive person for the mother and the family during birth, before and after. And a midwife is a medical professional who is actually, so like doulas are not anything medical, they are just support people. Midwives,
like emotional support and let me get you a blanket sort of thing?
Yep, or like I will do anything from like babysit someone's kids in labor if they need me to, or like if they're driving mom crazy, I'll drop kids off at grandma's house, you know, I'll cook, I'll clean, like whatever they need I will do.
Okay.
But as in my future role as a midwife, it is more medical centered. So we are monitoring fetal heart tones. We are doing vital signs. We are we're doing all sorts of things to help get the baby born, basically. Sure. So extreme hospital COVID policies are leading to more pregnant women to choose home birth. And I actually know a lot of people who they would have gotten a hospital birth, and they were either going to have to wear a mask while they were birthing, or
they were birthing?
That might be a little, I don't know. I've never gone through childbirth, so I wouldn't know. But it just seems like it'd be really tough to have a mask on.
Yeah.
It would be next to impossible. Hold on. Not just as they go to their room or whatever. Once they're in their room giving birth, they're still supposed to wear a mask.
Yeah. So at the hospital that I work at, patients do not have to wear masks in their rooms like they do in the hallways, but in the rooms they can have the mask off.
Which is at least a sensible approach. Otherwise, if you're in a hospital, you have to wear that thing over your face 24/7.
Yeah. And some people are there for months. So going back to mothers in labor, some hospitals do, some hospitals don't. But even in Massachusetts, one of my friends, she was going to a hospital in Worcester, and she was going to have to wear a mask in labor. And she was already having a bad time with her OB. Like, they didn't click. She was super judgmental of her. And she was like, you know what? That was the final straw.
I can imagine.
So people a lot of times insurance does not pay for home birth, and a lot of people are saying, I'd rather pay the $4,000 or $5,000 to get a birth that I'm comfortable with in my home, where I don't have to, one, go through all of these crazy COVID measures, and two, with a provider that respects my body and respects my bodily autonomy and isn't going to force unnecessary medical procedures on me. So a lot of women are kind of waking up to that, in the fact that home births are safe for low risk pregnancies.
So what's better in the long run, home birth or birthing in the hospital, do you think?
It depends. I mean, I have heard horror stories of a lot of birth trauma, and I would classify it as some of the things that happen to women as sexual assault and obstetric violence.
Oh.
Because
some of this obviously can't be talked about extensively on the air.
Yeah, but basically the difference is a home birth midwife generally is always going to ask for your permission. I do not even palpate a woman's stomach without asking her permission.
I don't know what that means.
I just feeling her uterus and feeling the baby. So I do not put my hands on you without asking you first.
Which is really nice that you're getting consent.
It's giving someone the bodily autonomy, and I think a lot of the times pregnant women kind of lose that bodily autonomy. Doctors and nurses oftentimes think like that that they can just do whatever they want to people, and I don't want to generalize. And, I do work as a nurse also, and I do respect people's bodily autonomy in that role, and not all OBs and not all L&D nurses are like that. But I've just heard horror stories, and a lot of people have that trauma, and they're like, I'm never putting myself in that position ever again. And a lot of the interventions, there's something that we call the Cascade of Interventions. So it starts with, first they're going to give you Pitocin to induce labors. So now you have these unnatural, really strong, really painful contractions. So then you're going to want an epidural because you're in so much pain.
Wow.
And then there's complications that can happen from that. And then you might have to get a C-section because, epidurals increase fetal distress. So there's a whole cascade of just one medical intervention that they can do to you, and it just puts you down this landslide of other traumatic and unnecessary things that can happen to women.
Okay.
So that's my little home birth spiel. But going back to the article, with hospital births becoming increasingly unattractive as a result of COVID-19 protocols, many women are beginning to consider home births as an alternative. When I decided to have my third baby at home, I did so because I felt that a home birth with an experienced midwife would be the safest place for labor and delivery. More from this article when we come back.
Yeah, one of the reasons that I would recommend home birth, because a friend of mine is actually dealing with this. I'm not going to name them, but they wanted to do a home birth, but for whatever reason they ended up having to go to the hospital. Yep. The mother ended up testing positive for cannabis, and now they're being investigated by DHS or whoever it is for cannabis.
Yep, which is ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
More coming up about this. It's Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com. The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com. On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So, I mean, that's really the reason why I amp is because I know that if it wasn't for you guys being on as many stations as you are, I never would have found the ideas of liberty.
Your amp will directly change more lives by getting Free Talk Live in front of people looking for talk radio online and on the air. When you amp Free Talk Live, you get perks like access to the AMP-only Facebook group and AMP podcast. Visit amp.freetalklive.com. The LRN.FM's social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
Free speech is protected on the internet, right? Not always. Government agencies try to limit free speech and commerce on the net. Luckily, when they do, the Institute for Justice is there to defend your First Amendment right to free speech. IJ helped set the first federal precedent for internet free speech in 1999, and ever since has worked to prevent unconstitutional roadblocks in cyberspace. Visit our website today at ij.org.
Do you appreciate what we do? Help us advertise, market, and promote for just $5 a month at amp.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. If you want to join the conversation, 603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160. And one of the most disturbing things I've heard so far tonight is that some hospitals are requiring patients to wear masks in their rooms by themselves all the time. Like, even if you're just laying in there sleeping and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, you have to wear your mask, presumably.
That's crazy.
Now, they may not be actually checking that. I don't know if they're going to pop in there at 4 o'clock in the morning to make sure you're wearing your mask while you're sleeping, but you're supposed to.
Hospitals are full of disease. We got to have everybody wear masks. They're safe.
Well, I could even understand, saying, knocking on the door and being like, hey, we're coming in. You need to put your mask on.
Yeah.
I would still say that's pretty stupid, but okay, whatever. I at least understand that.
Or maybe, I don't know exactly how it is. Like, maybe they want them to do like a COVID test before. I don't know. In my hospital,
which case, wearing a mask wouldn't be necessary, right?
Yeah,
because
so I
you
think
tested negative.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's it. And if you're in labor, like, you wouldn't have time to get the test first.
Okay.
I don't really know exactly how it works, but I'm just like, we don't do that where I work. That's just, and thankfully, because I would not enforce that. I would not make patients
The reason
wear
this
masks.
disturbs me, though, is because I was given more freedom over whether to choose to wear a mask when I was in jail than hospitals are giving their patients.
That's crazy.
Like, if I was in the cell by myself, I wasn't asked to wear a mask, and no one cared whether or not I did because I was in there by myself.
Yeah. Yeah, why would they?
Yeah, it's insane. And that's one of the reasons that healthcare workers are so frustrated. That's one of the reasons that people are so frustrated with hospitals. And evidently, because of all of this, in addition to, throwing unknown liquids at nurses and driving over signs and things like that, just general hooligan behavior that's sort of unexplained, people are choosing to just not go to hospitals, and instead they're opting in for home births.
And I do want a little disclaimer that OBs do have a skill that I don't have. You know, like if you need an emergency cesarean section, or if you're really high risk and something is going wrong, like, yes,
I imagine
a hospital birth is a better place for you. But for low risk moms and babies, if you're more comfortable in your home, then that's where you should birth. Even then, if you feel more comfortable in a hospital, that's where you should birth. It's really up to the person and wherever they will feel most comfortable and most easy to relax, and that's what's going to have the best results for you and your baby. So it's really to each their own, like whatever people feel most comfortable with.
And I imagine part of your job as a midwife is to identify these emergency situations as early as possible and say, hey, look, we're not going to be able to do this. You need to go to a hospital. You're going to need a C-section.
And even like I've heard of obstetricians saying, like, with things like shoulder dystocias, you're better off with a home birth midwife, because I'm taught 15 different ways, and that's when the shoulder is presented when it's coming out instead of the head, so it's just the baby's a little stuck. We're taught 15 different ways to resolve that. OBs are taught one. So there's different things that we can work around, so the baby and the mother are gonna have better results with a home birth midwife, generally, if they are properly trained in those techniques. So we both have a different skill set. And it really is just, it depends on, you know, what people feel comfortable with and what the circumstances are in the birth. So I don't try to knock hospitals too much, but I have
work at a hospital. So.
Yeah. So, you know, and I've seen some horror stories there too, which we won't get into. But, you know, I work with women all day long, and I've just heard some really, really sad things. And, you know, I try to advocate for women and children as much as for everybody, you know, but I obviously work with women and babies. So, you know, I really try to advocate for them and to keep everybody's bodily autonomy safe. So that's why I'm really passionate about like home birth, and I don't try to knock hospitals too much, but. So moving on with the article, this is by Carrie McDonald. She says, when I decided to have my third baby at home, I did so because I felt that a home birth with an experienced midwife would be the safest place for labor and delivery. My first two children were born in a large Boston teaching hospital, and medical interventions there caused complications for me. My last two children were born at home on their own time with no interventions and no complications. You can read about my last home birth experience here.
So how many children does she have at the hospital?
I thought she said she only has 3 children.
That's what I thought.
Oh, okay. So she had 2 at the hospital. She had her third baby at home. And then I think she had another baby after that. It was a little confusing there. So more women now are discovering for safety and joy of a planned midwife-assisted home birth. The coronavirus has caused expecting parents to question the safety of a hospital birth with restrictive hospital policies such as mask wearing and visitor limitations, make labor and delivery in a hospital less appealing. According to Joyce Kimball, a certified professional midwife in Massachusetts, I actually know who that is, more women are considering a home birth now than they were pre-pandemic. They are putting like commas not in the right places, and it's like really tripping me up. So my apologies if I like sound like I'm unable to read.
I mean, it's not just giving birth, though. A lot of people are choosing to do things at home instead of dealing with any sort of things, getting home deliveries and things like that, because they don't want to go to the grocery store and deal with the customer or a employee being like, hey, you got to wear a mask.
Yeah, it's getting more and more common for people to have their stuff delivered or have takeout delivered or whatever.
And I can't imagine like being in labor and having to choose between like my best friend, Matt, and my mom. I mean, like that's like a big thing too. I mean,
are they only allowing one person in now? I know they've always had limits.
Yeah, at some hospitals they are, but I think so my friend had her baby in December of 2019. And she had like 5 people in the delivery room. So like she had a crowd. She had her aunt, her mom, her sister, and her husband and somebody else. So before, I think you could kind of have like, obviously like you couldn't have like 20 people in there, but
sure.
I think you could have pretty much whoever you wanted. And now having to choose between your mom and, I mean, you're only going to give birth to this child once. I mean, this is like a life-changing event for people. So to make people
especially
choose
their first child.
Yeah, to put people in that position, like that just really sucks. So I could understand why a lot of people are choosing home births. So
well, if you don't have to deal with the bureaucratic nightmare that is the hospital, then it's win-win.
Yeah, exactly. So Joyce continues to say, my practice has seen an uptick in the interest of home birth and community birth since the spring of 2020. She runs one of the busiest home birth practices in the state. Prior to 2020, I would receive 1 to 2 calls per week from folks interested in a non-hospital birth. Now I receive about 4 to 5 calls per week. And the midwife I work with, Renee Lapointe, is also seeing a huge uptick.
Oh, wow.
In home births. And it makes sense because, people are finding out that it's safe, and they're finding out that, they don't have to wear a mask, and their husband and their mom can be there. So it makes sense.
It's interesting to me that home births are on the rise because I guess part of my mind envisions home birthing types to be the types of people who might be afraid of hospitals, or the types of people that are very anti-medical health care. I don't know what kinds of people.
Well, I don't generally trust the medical establishment, but if my significant other was going to give birth and home birthing was a possibility, I would rather that. I mean, it's her choice, obviously. Yeah. I would rather that, just like I would rather a private school or homeschooling over the public education system. Just like the public education system, the healthcare system we have in the United States is largely a public healthcare system, and it's not very good at a lot of things.
Yeah. And we see all different kinds of people. We do see like those earthy, crunchy people. We do see people who
Would you call them earthy, crunchy people?
Earthy, crunchy, yeah.
Okay.
I guess is one way to put it.
Like hippie types, or like people who don't really want to vaccinate their children, or but we also see like some doctors, we see some nurses, we see all different kinds of people who, not just people who don't trust the medical model, but I tend to say hospitals are for sick people, and low risk mothers aren't sick. So why would you go to the hospital to birth if you're not sick? And when you go to the hospital to birth, they treat you like a sick person. They give you an IV. They, might administer medications. So, they're going to give your baby erythromycin in their eyes just in case you had, I think it's either gonorrhea or chlamydia.
So they're going to spray something in your baby's eyes?
Yeah, it's a little eye drop. It's an antibiotic. Wouldn't you know if you had a sexually transmitted disease before?
Probably not chlamydia, because
but they could test you for it. Okay, so why are they giving you unnecessary antibiotics in their baby's eyes?
That's a really good question.
It's just like random little stuff like that I'm like, seriously guys, like why are we doing these to baby? Like why are we doing these things to babies? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. When we get back, we're going to talk about Apple, the woke company for the left, I guess.
Yeah.
They're very popular on the left. Well, they're not very popular among those who need some of their assistive features that have gone away.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it! You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
I'm crazy about My Magic Mud. This is the most important oral care product created this millennium, and I'm not kidding. We all have different opinions on politics and issues, but we all have mouths. And I want yours to be as clean as possible, with teeth as bright as they were meant to be. I will never be without My Magic Mud. It's a little surprising, but man, does it work. If you only listen to one thing I say ever, go to mymagicmud.com and get 20% off with code FTL. mymagicmud.com, code FTL.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The threat of a U.S. government shutdown later this week is receding after Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill struck a deal that could see votes taking place in Congress later on Wednesday. Meanwhile, President Biden is working overtime in a bid to try and secure the passage of two mainstays of his legislative agenda, a $1.2 trillion infrastructure deal and a broader spending package. He's facing opposition from some members of his own party, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who has told left-wing Democrats to vote against the infrastructure proposal. At the White House, Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
The president has been clear about his commitment to getting both pieces of legislation passed, both of them through. So right now what we're navigating through and we're working through is how we can get agreement, of course, 50 votes in the Senate on a reconciliation package. That's what we're discussing here. We have to see what senators are comfortable with and if everybody involved is comfortable with it to get enough votes to get it across the finish line. And ultimately, our objective here is to work towards unity, work towards an agreement. That's in process.
The Old Bailey in London has heard that Sarah Everard, the 33-year-old marketing executive whose murder shocked the UK, believed that she was being arrested by her killer. Police officer Wayne Cousins, facing sentencing for murder, used his Metropolitan Police identity badge to abduct her, accusing her of breaching COVID-19 regulations. Lawyer Harriet Wistrich is the director of the Centre for Women's Justice.
There needs to be radical change. We've seen the government making various comments and pledges, and we have seen the police recognising also the horror, but we still have a huge problem in relation to misogyny and violence against women generally, and the failure of the criminal justice system to tackle those problems.
Japan is getting a new prime minister. Former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida won his ruling LDP's leadership election. FSN's Phoebe Amoroso in our Tokyo bureau says Mr. Kishida is going to have his hands full.
The number one priority will absolutely be how to restart socio-economic activities after the pandemic. Now, no part of Japan is under a state of emergency or quasi-state of emergency. He's offered a stimulus package worth around 30 trillion yen. He also says that he would not raise the sales tax, which is at 10%, for about a decade, as this would put too much of a burden on people.
Another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct by US officials. Scientists are warning of an extinction crisis, with flora and fauna now disappearing at 1,000 times the normal historical rate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, climate change activist Greta Thunberg's evisceration of US President Joe Biden, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and other world leaders in a speech designed to pave the way for the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow later this year. She was speaking at the Youth for Climate conference in Milan and said there have been far too many promises made and far too little progress delivered on the path to combating climate change.
This is not about some expensive, politically correct green act of bunny hugging or blah blah blah. Build back better, blah blah blah. Green economy, blah blah blah. Net zero, blah blah blah. Climate neutral, blah blah blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but so far has led to no action. Our hopes and dreams drown in their empty words and promises. Of course, we need constructive dialogue, but they've now had 30 years of blah, 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 and where has that led us?
Milan Summit designed to allow a younger generation of activists to communicate directly with policymakers. Some of the ideas they're hammering out together are expected to make it on to the COP26 agenda. Alok Sharma, the president of COP26, appointed by Prime Minister Boris Johnson, evinced no emotion as he watched Greta Thunberg deliver her critique. The main news again, the threat of a US government shutdown is receding after Democrats and Republicans struck a deal that could see votes taking place in Congress later on Wednesday. President Biden is trying to secure the passage of two mainstays of his legislative agenda amid opposition from some of his fellow Democrats, and another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
A new video game is being criticized for its harsh portrayal of barbed wire. Here's GameBite's Caitlin Torres with more.
Bethesda's The Evil Within is a nightmarish adventure that shows bloody and rusty barbed wire being used to hurt innocent people, which has angered the nation's barbed wire producers.
Barbed wire is a positive force for good. It protects our junkyards from scrap metal thieves and helps keep our cattle ranches safe from rustlers. But Bethesda thinks it's okay to ignore all the benefits of barbed wire and make it look like some scary thing used by murderers.
The designers have promised that the game will feature prominent messages extolling the virtues of the sharp steel fencing. But barbed wire groups say that it's too little too late.
If Bethesda wants to make this right, they should have the main character go behind a fence and then be safe from monsters because they can't climb over the barbed wire to get him. Now that's a game I would play.
Let's hope Bethesda listens.
Thanks, Caitlin.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It is Free Talk Live, 603-283-6160. That's the caller line if you want to join in the conversation. 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria.
Riley, sorry.
And Nikki.
No worries. And with the recent release of iOS 15, Apple appears to have made some changes to Siri functionality that have removed features relied on by low vision and blind iPhone users. Now, these features already existed. I can't imagine what rationality they had for removing these already existing features from Siri.
That sort of thing happens all the time with new releases with Apple. They mess everything up for disabled users. I know every single year I monitor forums that blind people post on about these iOS updates, and every year Apple has so many bugs, accessibility bugs, that it's just frustrating because if a normal release of any software had as many bugs that disabled blind people are dealing with, then people would be outraged. But yet, there isn't a lot of outrage anywhere. There isn't a lot of pushback toward Apple because of these major bugs. And it's hard to get bug reports submitted because are we being listened to? I mean, blind people don't represent a massive amount of iPhone users.
I mean, plus, if they remove some of these features, it may be difficult to actually get in touch with support.
Oh, sure. And I don't use iOS 15 yet. I have not updated my phone because of all the bugs. I'm waiting until it's more stable.
Sure.
And I'm just concerned that because blind people are being virtually ignored by Apple, it seems like, they claim to be all about helping people with disabilities like the blind or impairments or whatever, but here they are demonstrating that they don't really care. They only do that to virtue signal.
Clearly, several Siri commands that provide details on phone calls, voicemails, and sending emails no longer appear to be working. The following commands used to be functional but have recently been removed. Do I have any voicemails? Play my voicemail messages. Now, that's an obvious feature to have. That's probably one that is used by people who can see.
Yeah, I use a lot of those features.
Check my call history. Check my recent calls. Who called me? Obviously useful if you can't look down at your phone and see who called you. Send an email and send an email to person.
So they took away those features?
Yeah, they did. As far as I'm aware. I like I said, I haven't updated yet, so I haven't tested this, but it sounds like they have removed these features.
Yeah, Rowley suggests that it may just be the result of bugs as well, that they just, didn't bug check the accessibility features or whatever, or the new version of Siri. I don't know how it works.
Which it seems likely because it seems like disabled people are the back of the line, so to speak. It's like,
accessibility features would be an important thing to beta test for sure.
Oh, sure. And, it feels like, I was born blind, so I'm used to having this quote-unquote disability, but it feels like I'm getting a quote-unquote separate but equal product.
Yeah.
In a way, because a lot of people just want to have, they want to claim that, blind people should get special products. No, we want to have the same access to the same devices our sighted peers are using. And iPhones and smartphones have revolutionized that for us in a lot of ways. I mean, it's nice for me to be able to pull out my phone, have the same iPhone that someone else has, and be able to access the same sort of things everyone else does to some extent. But
that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure. But it seems like people with disabilities are being ignored to some extent. It seems like it's always been that way. It seems like we who have a disability have to advocate harder for the things that we want because we're being ignored.
Over the last 2 weeks, this site has received several emails from iPhone users who are missing this key Siri functionality, or their relatives who are attempting to help them navigate the changes. The Siri feature removals have also been documented on the Apple Viz forums for blind and low vision users of Apple products. One person said, "One of the people whom I support told me that she could no longer use Siri to send email from her iPhone 8 with iOS 14. I tried on my iPhone with iOS 15, and the response from Siri was, 'Sorry, I can't help with that.' So she can no longer even send an email using iOS 14 because of whatever changes there have been made to Siri. That's what I would have expected, is that Siri is centralized on Apple servers, so when they update Siri, it affects all versions of iOS, but I don't know.
Yeah, probably.
But now Siri is saying, 'Sorry, I can't help with that.' Subsequently, I've had the same response on a phone running iOS 12. If this is a deliberate feature removal, it's certainly a loss to some users with sight loss who find it a convenient way to send a brief email. And probably the only way they can go about sending an email.
For some people, yeah, I can send an email differently, but it takes me a little longer.
I saw you tapping on your phone earlier, and it was impressive. Prior to this last iOS update, if Siri was asked to play voicemail, Siri would. Now Siri just states that she can't do that. Trying to find a workaround, as my dad, who is completely blind, heavily relied on this feature. My sister is blind, and Siri would respond to voice commands, i.e. read my text, call Barbara, answer questions regarding weather, and most importantly, tell my sister who called her. Which, again, is probably very helpful for people who can't look down at the phone and see who called them.
Absolutely. I can't imagine that they would purposely take away these features. I would think that it would have to be some sort of bug or,
or an oversight.
Yeah,
an
or
oversight,
an oversight.
probably.
That's what we're hoping here. But I don't know. Apple has a history of leaving bugs on their systems for quite some time. I know. So I use a piece of software on my phone called VoiceOver, which is different than Siri. It allows me to interact with the screen on the iPhone. And so using VoiceOver, there's always some sort of bug with every update. It seems like some bugs have persisted forever, though, and it's really frustrating because...
To be fair, that's pretty much true of every piece of software I've ever used, is they update something and it creates a bug somewhere else. That's why I have updates just completely disabled on my gaming PC, because Microsoft is bad about that as well.
Yeah.
They update this. I mean, virus software, antivirus software is one of the worst offenders. I've seen, McAfee antivirus just brick computers because of deleting system files and things like that, and having... It's absolutely horrifying what some of these companies do when they're actually beta testing their software, or they just don't pay attention to their beta testers.
Yeah.
It's worth noting that it's still possible to ask Siri to play the most recent voicemail message that's available, or a voicemail from a specific person, but Siri will not read out a list of all the available voicemails. The Siri commands seem to have disappeared when iOS 15 was released, But iOS 14 users are also not able to use them anymore, so it's not an issue tied to the operating system. They asked Apple for a comment on whether this was a bug or if there are alternate commands available for users. Isn't the whole point of Siri is that she's supposed to be able to do some sort of natural language interpretation where you don't have to use specific commands?
Yeah, that's the whole point of Siri. It's supposed to be a better voice assistant every time it updates.
But it doesn't. That rarely happens. And that happens to me all the time when I'll use Siri while I'm driving. And she's like, oh, sorry, I couldn't understand you, or sorry, I can't help you with that. I rarely can use any of her features. So I was just able to send a text message using Siri for the first time the other day.
Wow.
And that's because I was really desperate because I was driving and I was like, I need to contact this person right now. I don't have time to pull over and I'm not going to text while I'm driving. And it worked. So it was the first time I actually got it to work, honestly.
I have no experience with Siri, but I briefly played around with the Google Voice Assistant, and I was not impressed. And it required me to always have my microphone on and Google always listening. So I was just like, I don't.
So I actually don't have Hey Siri, which is the feature that keeps the microphone always on my phone. I turn that off because I don't like having that going on.
Yeah, I don't blame you. So these people waited several days for a response from Apple, but did not hear back. A user on the AppleVis forum spoke to Apple support and was told that Apple is aware of the issue. So there's a possibility that this function will be re-added at some point. But it's still disgusting that they didn't make it front and center as something they needed to make sure was available in their new version of Siri or whatever it is they have going on. Really unfair to people who cannot see to not be able to use their phones because Apple and...
It's a big deal for those people.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. When we come back, we're going to talk more about those $1 trillion coins that could fix everything. It's Free Talk Live.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
Brute force, intransigent defiance, adamantine will. These are the hallmarks of the AI tank. These gigantic machines have the firepower of an army, but they also have their own sense of honor and duty. When the world breakers arrive, battle will be joined, planets will shake, and war and peace will never be the same again. World Breakers. Stories from David Weber, Larry Correa, and more. Available August 3rd from BaneBooks.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at Bitcoin.com. That's Bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
The Free State Project has reached its goal of 20,000 liberty lovers who've pledged to move to New Hampshire and get active to achieve liberty in our lifetime. Perhaps you're trying to figure out what part of New Hampshire should be your destination. If so, consider Keene. You'll find more than 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com. Keene is famous for its historic, publicity-generating activism, as well as being the liberty media capital of the world. It's home to freekeene.com, New Hampshire's destination for liberty activism, news, and opinion. For years, we've been compiling over 150 reasons to move to Keene at move.freekeene.com, where you'll learn about some of what's happening here and what makes Keene a great place to live. If you love liberty, you'll probably enjoy anywhere you end up in the Shire. But do your due diligence first. Please visit move.freekeen.com for the full list of over 150 reasons to move to Keene. That's move.freekeen.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where you can call in, take control of the airwaves, and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160 is the call-in line to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And you can get your digital tickets now for Liberty in Our Lifetime, an event being hosted by the Free Private Cities Foundation. Physical tickets are sold out, but you can still get virtual tickets at lifetimeliberty.com. Liberty in Our Lifetime is exploring projects happening right now around the world that are working to achieve that lofty goal of securing freedom in our lifetime. Speakers from Crypto Valley, Prospera, the Seasteading Institute, and more are speaking at this October 16th event. So go get your digital tickets now at lifetimeliberty.com and see what people are doing all around the world to create voluntary societies with a live and let live attitude at lifetimeliberty.com. Again, lifetimeliberty.com. I was on vacation when I learned that they had actually sold out of physical tickets. I was talking about something in regard to it with Mark. He's like, oh, well, you can cancel that. They're sold out. I was like, oh, Mark, I'm in Kentucky. I don't know about updating this at the moment. And I'm also hammered and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, but I will do what I can.
Bad time.
However, they do still have virtual tickets, lifetimeliberty.com. Now, I had something pulled up and then I lost it. So give me 1 second because I had to click that over because I no longer had it in front of me. Australia is a weird beast these days. I mean, it's a full-blown police state. I think we can all agree on that.
I definitely agree. I mean, I've heard about Australia being fully locked down and people being harassed.
I mean, you're basically locked in your house 23 hours a day in New South Wales.
Which is basically house arrest. Like
it is absolutely house arrest. And you're allowed 1 hour of exercise.
Oh, you get your yard time.
Oh my
Yes, per day.
Yeah, that literally is like yard time. Only 1 hour? That's
It is
crazy.
exactly yard time. And worse, the New South Wales police are texting you at random, and you have 15 minutes to respond with a selfie of you in your house.
What if your phone's turned off?
Well, 15 minutes later, they're going to send the police out there.
That's ridiculous.
To make sure that you are where you're supposed to be. Yes, they are full-blown police state. And despite all of that, their total COVID-19 cases have now topped 100,000. And officials are taking things even further. Sydney residents who are not vaccinated against COVID-19 risk being barred from various social activities, even when they are freed from stay-at-home orders in December.
But Arya,
wow,
we can't allow unvaccinated people to participate in society. It's too dangerous.
Well, what alarms me about this most is that they're basically giving up and saying we're not lifting this lockdown until December, which means we have to get all the way through October and November And it's probably going to be the end of December before they actually do it.
And what is their reasoning for that? Like, do they have any, like, studies that they're citing? Or they have any sort of data or evidence that this is going to help? Like, I don't really understand what they're doing.
It's supposed to prevent the spread of COVID-19, right?
But it's not.
No,
so.
And one county or state in Australia, however they refer to it, one territory, just had one guy test positive for COVID-19, and they're scrambling to figure out, how did he get it? Because
who cares?
We're under lockdown.
Like, it's okay, Australia. Just chill out. Like, it doesn't matter how he got it.
It kind of does, because there's no interstate travel in Australia, and this guy didn't go anywhere. He stayed in his home. He obeyed all the rules, and suddenly he has COVID-19.
So I'm really
kind of weird.
I'm really concerned about the lockdowns here in Australia, because they're going to really, really, really affect the mental health of these people locked down. It's going to drive them crazy. It's going to create a lot of isolation and loneliness issues, and it's really going to cause a lot of problems. Yes, we can socialize online, but it's not the same as getting a hug.
And spring just started in Australia. As I understand it, December would be the start of summer for them. So
why would they still be locked down? I'm thinking like our seasonal cycles. So yeah, that doesn't make sense that they're already saying, oh, you have to be locked down until December. That would maybe make sense here because that's like the fall, like flu season.
Well, I thought January and February were our worst flu season.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's like when it makes more sense to lock down during the fall than it would in the summer.
Well, they're not locking down during the summer. They're ending it during the summer. Because summer for them would start on December 22nd, right?
Oh, okay. I think I'm just confused.
Because they're in the southern hemisphere. I know. I was confused by it,
Don't mind
too.
me. I don't know my Australian seasons.
And it's so weird to me to think about them celebrating, Christmas at the very beginning of summertime. But
it's definitely different, isn't it? I mean, we picture winter being Christmas and Thanksgiving, at least in the American part of the world of Thanksgiving, and fall holidays and winter holidays being Christmas and New Year's. And here, Australia and New Zealand and those countries down south, they're celebrating these holidays during the summer.
I'm curious what Australian Christmas songs there are, because they're not dreaming of a white Christmas down there, obviously.
No.
I don't know of any Australian Christmas songs. I think we ought to look
But
into
neither are people in Texas.
Also fair. But it does occasionally snow in parts of Texas.
Yeah.
Maybe there are probably some parts of the state that don't get snow. But anyway, under a roadmap to exit lockdown in Australia's biggest city, unvaccinated people are already subject to delays in freedoms that will be gradually granted to inoculated residents between October the 11th and December the 1st. So as they're entering spring, people who are vaccinated are going to get more freedom than people who are unvaccinated. This person, whose name I'm not going to attempt, said people who choose not to be vaccinated could be barred entry to shops, restaurants, and entertainment venues, even after the state lifts all restrictions against them on December the 1st.
So I read a lot of tweets from people on the left on Twitter, and they always make the claim that if you don't get vaccinated, you shouldn't be allowed to participate in society because you're not allowing yourself to keep others safe.
I would gladly agree to that if they're not going to put a gun to my head and make me obey their little government rules.
But they're not putting a gun to your head, are you?
But the government absolutely is putting a gun to my head, and literally did so a little over 6 months ago. But even that, metaphorically, yes, every law that is on the books is the government putting a gun to your head, because if you don't obey the law, they will ultimately arrest you. And if you don't agree to be arrested, they will kill you.
Yeah.
That's
true.
true.
And you can also get and spread COVID if you're vaccinated.
You can. And that was one of the things that bothered me most about Louder Than Life. If it is a super spreader event, if people go back and now COVID's out of control and it's because of Louder Than Life, they're going to blame the unvaccinated for it. But if you were unvaccinated, you had to prove that you did not have COVID-19 with one of the actual test results.
Yeah, so that means...
You could not go there if you had COVID and were unvaccinated. However, if you were vaccinated, that was all they needed, even though all the science shows that you can still get COVID and spread it if you're vaccinated. So it would be the fault of the vaccinated.
Yeah, and that's how it is in most places. I know one of the rules for the medical exemption where I work, if you don't want to get vaccinated, one of the things was you have to get tested weekly.
Which is better.
The vaccinated people don't have to, though. So
right, and that's in full disregard of the science that says very clearly that vaccinated people can still get and spread COVID-19 with just as much viral load, just as much contamination as people who are unvaccinated. But it's not the unvaccinated people spreading COVID-19 because they're the ones who still have to get tested and prove that they're not positive for COVID-19. It's pretty much a broken system here. It's all about obedience and complying and getting that stupid jab, whether it works or not. 603-283-6160.
If you want to bring more liberty into your community, there's something you should see. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, break through. It's true. It's truly something new. If you'd like to see real prosperity, start your own currency, boost the economy. Intercoin, the movement you might want to join. If you like Bitcoin, its impact's hard to overstate, results you can appreciate. If you're tired of relying on the state, want to make your own community great, homelessness and hunger to eliminate, let the wealth accumulate. Don't wait for the growth rate to accelerate. Go to intercoin.org and get the coins for yourself.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The threat of a US government shutdown later this week is receding after Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill struck a deal that could see votes taking place in Congress later on Wednesday. Meanwhile, President Biden is working overtime in a bid to try and secure the passage of two mainstays of his legislative agenda, a $1.2 trillion infrastructure deal and a broader spending package. He's facing opposition from some members of his own party, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who has told left-wing Democrats to vote against the infrastructure proposal. At the White House, Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
The president has been clear about his commitment to getting both pieces of legislation passed, both of them through. So right now what we're navigating through and we're working through is how we can get agreement, of course, 50 votes in the Senate on a reconciliation package. That's what we're discussing here. We have to see what senators are comfortable with and if everybody involved is comfortable with it to get enough votes to get it across the finish line. And ultimately, our objective here is to work towards unity, work towards an agreement. That's in process.
The Old Bailey in London has heard that Sarah Everard, the 33-year-old marketing executive whose murder shocked the UK, believed that she was being arrested by her killer. Police officer Wayne Cousins, facing sentencing for murder, used his Metropolitan Police identity badge to abduct her, accusing her of breaching COVID-19 regulations. Lawyer Harriet Wistrich is the director of the Centre for Women's Justice.
There needs to be radical change. We've seen the government making various comments and pledges, and we have seen the police recognising also the horror, but we still have a huge problem in relation to misogyny and violence against women generally, and the failure of the criminal justice system to tackle those problems.
Japan is getting a new prime minister. Former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida won his ruling LDP's leadership election. FSN's Phoebe Amoroso in our Tokyo bureau says Mr. Kishida is going to have his hands full.
The number one priority will absolutely be how to restart socio-economic activities after the pandemic. Now, no part of Japan is under a state of emergency or quasi-state of emergency. He's offered a stimulus package worth around 30 trillion yen. He also says that he would not raise the sales tax, which is at 10%, for about a decade, as this would put too much of a burden on people.
Another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct by US officials. Scientists are warning of an extinction crisis, with flora and fauna now disappearing at 1,000 times the normal historical rate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Riley,
and Nikki.
And Bitcoin.com is the best place to go to learn about cryptocurrency. If you don't know anything about this important world-changing information, get on over to Bitcoin.com. Click Getting Started at the top of the page. Just take a few minutes out of your day and watch these videos that will explain to you the basics of cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and what it is and how it works, because it's changing the world, and it's only going to continue changing the world as, it's easy to forget that Bitcoin is only like 10, 12 years old. I don't remember. I think it's probably 11 years at this point.
And it's done really well. I love how Bitcoin's doing right now.
It has done exceptionally well. It was the best investment of the decade for 2010 to 2020 by an enormous margin.
Oh, for sure.
Because you got to remember, at one point, Bitcoin was a penny each.
Yeah, and people forget that Bitcoin isn't just an investment; it's a currency.
Well, it wants to be a currency.
Well,
it's unusable as one. For
yeah,
the most
that's
part.
true. I mean, the network's all clogged up, and the fees are really astronomically high. But it's supposed to be a currency. It's supposed to be allowed. It's supposed to be a currency to help the unbanked and those living in poorer countries have money.
Absolutely. So head on over to Bitcoin.com. And if you already are knowledgeable about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin.com still has something for you. You can stay up to date on all of the news and headlines that are relevant to you. That's news.bitcoin.com. All on a sleek and easy to use modern website. So we're talking about Australia here, which is being rather open and transparent, at least, which is surprising for a police state, about their two-tier system, which is designed to encourage more people to get vaccinated. No. That's not true at all.
It's creating class warfare.
It's designed to punish people for being unvaccinated. You're not offering them a reward. You're not saying, hey, get vaccinated and we'll give you tickets to Disney World or whatever. You're saying, hey, if you want to have the right to go to the grocery store, you have to get vaccinated. That's a very different thing than encouraging people.
So I think people need to understand that rights do not come from government. They are inherent in your life. You have the right to associate with whom you wish. And that being said, if you're forcing your company on someone else, that's a problem. But the unvaccinated people and the vaccinated people are at war because they feel like someone is being forced on them. And it's not the case. This is the story you're being told.
I don't know how true it is. None of the people who I know who are vaccinated give me any sort of hard time about being unvaccinated. They don't hate me for being unvaccinated. There are some like hard left people who are very young, like 22 years old, and probably hardcore socialists who are constantly calling this a pandemic of the unvaccinated or whatever. But by and large, I don't think the average person is really buying this particular hate sell.
I don't think I've met anybody who has attacked me for being unvaccinated. I mean, I'm being threatened to lose my job, but I guess that's about it.
And that's largely because of the Biden administration. Let's
yeah,
be
that's not. And honestly, like my manager personally would not fire me.
Right.
If it was up to her.
Wow.
See, I'm in a crappy position where my manager also would not fire me if it was up to her. But because of that, she's also willing to just lie and say I'm vaccinated.
Yeah.
I love that.
I don't, because I want nothing more to get fired from this place, and it's proving very difficult. It's been criticized for both this two-tier system, for both penalizing vulnerable groups who have not had access to inoculations and for falling short of providing a real incentive for the vaccine hesitant. Yes, because as we pointed out, this isn't a incentive. It's like you're smacking someone and you said, hey, your incentive is that I will stop doing this.
Yeah, it's like the stop hitting yourself thing where you grab someone's hand and you smack them in the face.
An incentive would be like, hey, if you do this, I'll give you a candy bar or whatever.
Yeah. But aren't people being offered lottery tickets and things like that in the United States for getting a vaccine?
They were, and those were actually incentives. I don't know how successful they were, and I don't know whether or not they're still going on, but there was a time when people were, being given $50 or gift cards to wherever just for getting vaccinated.
The most ridiculous incentive I had ever heard was in Worcester, Massachusetts on South Main Street, which is known for being, having high drug rates. They were going around and giving people like $30 or $50, which
probably in cash.
Yeah, in cash, like just enough for a fix to get vaccinated.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
How did they know they spent the money on the vaccine on getting vaccinated?
Well, I don't know. Vaccinated is free.
Yeah, I think they brought them to get vaccinated, and then right after they were like, okay, here's your $30 to buy your drug of choice.
Wow.
In Australia, pubs, cafes, gyms, and hairdressers will reopen to fully vaccinated people on October the 11th in New South Wales, which is where Sydney is, and more curbs will be eased once 80% of its adult population becomes fully vaccinated, expected by the end of October. Now, one of the things, I don't like the United Kingdom, I don't like any of the stuff that its government does, and I don't like the health passes in general. Well, I hate the health passes, but there is at least allow you to say that you're immune because you've had COVID-19.
Which makes sense.
It does make sense. The ones here in the United States that we've seen so far don't give you that option, and the government of New South Wales is also not giving people that option.
I wish that option was available because from what I've heard, natural immunity is better.
Which is what we would expect. I would expect my body to be better at fighting a disease in general than human ingenuity. Especially when it's a year and a half into this.
It's weird that COVID is being treated differently than other viruses, because I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like chickenpox parties or like the chickenpox lollipops.
Yeah, but those are no longer allowed.
Because you have to get vaccinated against chickenpox, but they work perfectly fine. I know like people used to have their kids suck on a lollipop and then they'd mail it to somebody else's kid. They'd pass it around and they would all get chickenpox. They'd get it, they'd get over it, and then they have immunity.
I don't know. I don't think pox parties are the smartest way to do it, but okay.
I mean, it worked for me.
Teach
I
their
had
own.
chickenpox, and then that was
but
it.
But the point is, like, I'm not saying anything against the chickenpox vaccine. I'm vaccinated against chickenpox. What I am saying is that the natural immunity works.
It, but it's because I'm naturally immune to it.
Yeah, the natural immunity for chickenpox works.
So Australia is pursuing a faster reopening through higher vaccination rates despite persistent infections. Interestingly, the same thing is true in Israel, where they have a very high vaccination rate, and still their COVID-19 cases are climbing. The Delta-fueled outbreak has divided state and territory leaders, with some presiding over virus-free parts of the country, indicating that they will defy a federal plan to reopen borders once the adult population reaches 80% vaccination, which is expected in November. So these virus-free parts of the country do not want to reopen their internal borders once the restrictions are lifted, because even though they don't have COVID-19 there, they're so terrified of strangers bringing it in that they may not actually reopen.
I think this is the problem with the wording that we're being exposed to. The wording is pandemic. It inspires fear in people, and when people are afraid, they lose their rationality.
I don't think the word pandemic inspires fear in people anymore. We've had it thrown at us consistently for the last year and a half. To me, pandemic is just a normal word that means nothing at this point.
Well, maybe I spend way too much time on social media, so...
The number of COVID-19 cases recorded by Australia since the beginning of the pandemic topped 100,000 on Tuesday, with around 70% of those detected since a Delta variant-fueled wave hit the country in mid-June. So despite the lockdowns that they've had since mid-June, I don't know exactly when the lockdowns went into place, but they've been in place for a very long time. 70% of Australian cases of COVID-19 have been since mid-June. New South Wales reported 863 new cases yesterday, which is up from 787 a day earlier. And again, they're one of the most locked down places in the world. The lockdowns do not appear to be working for New South Wales. The northeast state of Queensland reported 4 cases, including its first mystery case in almost 2 months. Officials are racing to trace the source after an aviation worker who has not traveled interstate or overseas recently somehow contracted the virus. Well, they got it from someone because it doesn't just spontaneously appear.
Yeah, something had to happen.
So could be a false positive.
It could very well be. But one thing is for sure, the lockdowns there don't seem to be doing any good, and they're certainly not doing any good for the people of Australia or New South Wales. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
This is Michael Dean from the Freedom Fiends. I've run websites since 1996 and have used over a dozen web hosts in that time. AgristHosting.com is the only one that hasn't broken my heart. Agrist Hosting's uptime and service is stellar, and their DDoS mitigation is the best I've seen. That's important because if you tell the truth in this world, you'll ruffle feathers. And some people will try dirty tricks to silence your voice. No matter what the haters hit us with, Agrist Hosting keeps our websites online. If you have a mission-critical commercial presence or a world-changing activism site, you cannot tolerate any skullduggery. So go with agrishosting.com. Have a WordPress or blog site, but you're not satisfied with performance or uptime? Or just want raw hosting? Want to pay with Bitcoin? Agris Hosting specializes in high-performance hosting with personalized service. Go to agrishosting.com and click on the button that says Get Hosted. That's agrishosting.com.
Looking for a great real estate investment? Consider New Hampshire, which is ground zero for the Liberty Movement. Your first call should be to Mark Worden from Porcupine Real Estate. He's more than just a real estate agent. He's your New Hampshire concierge. Where are the best places to live? Do you want farm, city, the burbs, or forest? Do you want a duplex or multifamily building so that renters pay your mortgage? There are homes in all price ranges in New Hampshire, and Mark can help with financing too. Invest in liberty and property. Mark Worden can help.
PorcupineRealEstate.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
We have some good news. The indictments against Ross Ulbricht in the District of Maryland were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they can never be refiled. This is especially good because those indictments contain the only charge ever made that Ross engaged in murder for hire. This was a serious allegation that Ross Ulbricht denies. It was never prosecuted or ruled on by a jury, but was trumpeted by the federal government and the media as if it were proven fact. The Maryland court held these indictments for almost 5 years, poisoning Ross's case and leaving him under a cloud of unproven allegations. As explained in Ross's appeal to the Supreme Court, the fact that the judge used these allegations to give Ross a draconian sentence of double life without parole violated his Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial. Judges are required to issue sentences based on convictions decided by a jury, not unproven allegations never even charged at trial. Although this is a positive development, the dropped indictment will not set Ross free. Now, a presidential pardon is Ross's only hope of freedom. Sign the petition at freeross.org. freeross.org.
Some of you asked, and now we've delivered. LRN.FM's live Keene, New Hampshire studio shows are now streamed in HD on Twitch. Visit our channel at twitch.lrn.fm and give it a follow. If you have Amazon Prime, you get one free subscription on Twitch. If you use it on our channel, Twitch will give LRN.FM a monthly piece of your Prime subscription cost. So please watch, follow, share, and subscribe to twitch.lrn.fm. That's twitch.lrn.fm. So you've signed the Shire Society Declaration and are planning your move to New Hampshire to be around more liberty-oriented people. Next, sign up for the Shire Society Forum at forum.shiresociety.com. There are a bunch of people there who are already in the Shire, and they want to meet you. If you're already in the Shire physically, you should also come by the forums. Remember, not everyone uses Facebook. New people are signing up for the Shire Society Forum every month, so drop in and say hello at forum.shiresociety.com.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live. You can join us 603-283-6160 if you'd like to weigh in or share your opinions on whatever is important to you. That's 603-283-6160. With you tonight, it's Aria,
Riley,
and Nikki.
And we talked about it a bit last night, but I found it in the news today, so I want to talk about it again. The $1 trillion coin that Washington is eyeing as a solution to the budget problem.
Wait, $1 trillion coin?
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
They want to print a coin. Oh, not print. They want to mint a coin.
What are they going to make this coin out of?
Probably platinum or something. And they're just going to write 1 trillion on it and give it to the Federal Reserve Bank and say, here, we paid $1 trillion of the national debt.
I really hope the value of that platinum is actually $1 trillion.
Oh, it absolutely won't be. It'll just be a platinum coin with trillion stamped on it. And I love everything about it.
It's just going to be a penny with taped like a piece of paper. 1 trillion.
Funny. It's just so funny that these people are considering this.
Talk of a $1 trillion U.S. coin has returned to Washington now that Congress is mired in yet another political impasse over raising the debt ceiling. And as we mentioned last night, they're going to raise the debt ceiling. They're just going to create a bunch of drama before they do it.
Of course they are.
Yeah,
they
it's
do this
inevitable.
every single time. They keep printing money. The dollar is going to go through a meltdown eventually. It's just being kicked down the road a little more.
And eventually they won't be able to do that. The idea for the pricey platinum, which would be unprecedented, but not necessarily illegal. In fact, I think it would be completely legal, was originally floated in 2011 as a runaround in the recurring war between Democrats and Republicans. Look, can we stop using the word war to describe the bickering between Democrats and Republicans?
They're both on the same team. They just...
Well, they bicker. Yeah. They disagree, but calling it a war is so stupid.
They just need to go away.
They do. They really do.
That's why I want them to make. That's why I want them to make this $1 trillion coin. It makes the government go away even faster.
Because people will see it for the sham. It really is.
I can't wait for the U.S. dollar to just collapse.
And that's why I brought in this article, because some of the comments that the economists make clearly reveal that they don't understand how any of this actually works.
Oh man.
Champions of this idea are pointing to a 1997 law, which in theory would allow the Treasury Secretary to authorize a platinum coin at the value of his or her discretion. The president could direct the Treasury Secretary to mint a $1 trillion piece. $1 trillion piece.
Wow.
I like someone who's watching at youtube.freetalklive.com suggested where is they're going to do this, they have to use the Monopoly guy as the face of the coin.
Yes.
They have to do that.
So you guys are frequently talking about the dollar collapsing, and some people are excited about it and some people aren't. I don't know where I fall on this because I can see how problematic such a thing would be in society.
Yeah.
To me, it's just Darwinism, man. Anyone who's been watching the economy just since I've been an adult, and they don't realize that there's some huge underlying problem that needs to be addressed, and they didn't take the time to look into that because they have, for some reason, faith in the government that has lied to them their entire lives. It's time for some Darwinism to happen, man. They brought this on themselves. Those of us who paid attention and went, wait a minute, man, something is not right here.
Yeah.
Why did all of this money just get shifted to Halliburton and Lockheed Martin, and why is Dick Cheney one of the CEOs or owners of Halliburton, and he's the one who was, if none of this made people raise questions, then they deserve the struggle that's going to come.
So, Arya, someone might make the comment, well, you're just unsympathetic to people because of your Darwinism comments. What would you tell them?
I have sympathy for people who deserve sympathy, but people who are just burying their heads in the sand, who weren't concerned the last time they raised the debt limit, who aren't paying any attention. The people who voted for me when I ran for office, I have no sympathy for them. They deserve what's coming to them, right?
Oh, wow.
And that's...
the people that voted for you just because you had an R next to your name?
Yeah. And it's true of Democrats as well. And people who are, they support the Federal Reserve simply because it has the word federal in it. They deserve what's coming to them. The government has made it clear my entire life that it cannot be trusted ever. It lies all the time about anything, whether there's a benefit in lying about it or not. It just lies. And these people are still putting their faith and their trust in the government. 2 years ago, the people on the left were screaming that government couldn't be trusted. And it was because of Donald Trump.
Yeah, because Trump was in power. Now they're like, oh, we love the government. The government's the best thing that ever happened to us because Biden's in power.
Yes, and now Republicans are saying, oh, well, we can't trust the government anymore. And none of them are looking around trying to identify what the actual underlying issue is.
And the issue is that government has lied. It doesn't matter which thug is occupying the awful office. Every government official has lied to you at some point in your life.
Such a maneuver would bypass Congress, which is, again, flirting with disaster. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned on Tuesday that the government would run out of cash unless the federal borrowing cap is lifted. And again, just compare this to your life where you're telling your spouse, hey, look, we're going to run out of money. We're going to be broke if we don't get our credit card limit increased. If your wife or your husband doesn't divorce you after that stupid statement, then you also deserve the bankruptcy that's coming. But that's exactly what's happening here. They're like, hey, we're in too much debt. We're not bringing in enough money. The only way we're going to survive another 6 days is if we borrow more money. It's absolutely insane. And people hear this and they don't think, yeah, no, that's not going to work. This entire system is broken and I need to be getting into gold or cryptocurrency or something so that I'm prepared when this nonsense comes to a head. Then they deserve that.
Well, there's also people at head of economics, in air quotes, saying that, no, you shouldn't worry about this. Like, this is all fine. Everything's going to be fine.
Everything's going to work out.
About
Don't worry. It's going to be just fine. You're going to get your money. Don't worry. Don't worry.
Though it may seem far-fetched, the idea got far enough during the 2003 impasse that the Treasury Department explicitly ruled out minting the coin. Former President Barack Obama alluded to the internal talks over the concept in a January 2017 podcast, saying there were all kinds of wacky ideas. But the solution has hardly been embraced by mainstream economists. Critics include economist Paul Krugman, who, by the way, I think is one of the people who hates Bitcoin, who wrote in March 2020 that the idea was, quote, an accounting gimmick that, quote, wouldn't fool anyone. Yes, but the entire Federal Reserve thing that is going on here, where the Treasury Department creates some notes and the Federal Reserve buys those notes, and then the Treasury Department has to buy the notes back, but with an interest, and the Federal Reserve only takes their currency in order to buy them back. The entire thing is an accounting gimmick between banks and governments adding zeros to a spreadsheet to make themselves richer and us poorer.
So let's talk about something real quick. People need to realize that the dollar does not have the purchasing power it did in 1913. And you have
it
to
doesn't
ask
have the
yourself,
purchasing power that
why?
it had 6 months ago.
Yeah. I agree. It's ridiculous. People need to understand that the dollar is dropping in value. It's dropping in purchasing power, and they're not even screaming about it. They just don't seem to care.
Well, that's why they've always referred to inflation as the hidden tax. You know, it happens so insidiously and so slowly until you hit hyperinflation that they just don't notice that, hey, you know, didn't a 20-ounce soda used to cost $1.09, and now it's a 16.9-ounce soda and it's $1.79? What caused that? They don't realize that the quantities of things have gotten smaller, the portions got smaller, and that the price went up. And that's one of the ways they hide the inflation. And they're like, oh, inflation is only up 5%. I'm like, you say that, but all of these prices are up significantly over just where they were 15 years ago, and the quantity's smaller.
Yeah.
I was doing some grocery shopping here in New Hampshire, picking up some stuff so I could have some food to eat. And there were shortages on the shelf. It's crazy.
There are shortages everywhere, and they're going to get worse. And people who work in that, you know, the supply line, they're like, hey, this is there's something really bad coming. And we're going to get into that later. But congressional Republicans have opposed raising the debt ceiling. No, they haven't. They're delaying their approval of it, arguing that President Joe Biden's enormous proposed investments in infrastructure and social programs are fiscally irresponsible. Which is a good point. Joe Biden's $4 trillion-ish thing is a huge part of the reason that the national debt is going to be hit at least so soon, because they're like, hey, national debt's approaching. Let's spend $4 trillion.
Instead of $29 trillion, you're now $33 trillion in debt.
For now, there is no obvious solution to the impasse, raising the possibility that the United States could default for the first time in its history. That's a factually incorrect statement. The United States has defaulted on its debt on, I think, 3 occasions at this point. But inflation is only going to delay the default a little bit. I mean, that's what the Bretton Woods breakdown in 1973 was. It was the U.S. defaulting on its debt and saying, hey, yeah, look, we're not gonna play that game. It's backed by nothing now. On Tuesday, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said senior Democratic representative wants to have a $1 trillion coin that doesn't require congressional official. Isn't that nice of the Democratic representative?
So nice.
It is a workaround, said Ray. A Bard College professor. It sort of makes it obvious that the debt limit itself is a pretty stupid idea. So they just want to get rid of it. Other people wonder whether $1 trillion is big enough. A $1 trillion coin isn't cool. You know what's cool? A quadrillion dollar coin.
Yeah, let's do a quadrillion dollar coin. That'd be awesome.
Might as well.
More coming up here about this weird new world religion. It's Free Talk Live.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
When Monster Hunter International discovers one of Isaac Newton's wardstones being auctioned off, they decide to steal it and use it to destroy the Chaos God once and for all. But a mysterious thief upends their plan, and it soon becomes a race against time as something much older and infinitely more evil awakens in the jungles of South America. Monster Hunter Bloodlines by New York Times bestselling author Larry Correia and Baen Books. Visit monsterhunternation.com for more.
The new 4th edition of Healing Our World, The Compassion of Libertarianism will take your understanding of liberty to a deeper level and has over 1,300 updated references, new cartoons, and a foreword by Dr. Ron Paul. With discounts for multiple book purchases, the 4th edition of Healing Our World is a great gift for the liberals, pragmatists, environmentalists, and Christians in your life who think libertarianism is cold-hearted. Get yours today at healing.freetalklive.com and use promo code FTL for a $5 discount. If you want to know the latest about Free Talk Live before we go on the air, all you need to decide is how you want it delivered. It's your choice. Visit news.freetalklive.com to receive our usually weekly news updates by email. Plus, we have a Twitter account at twitter.freetalklive.com, and you can follow us on the decentralized Mastodon platform at toot.freetalklive.com. So please follow us at toot.freetalklive.com and sign up for our emails at news.freetalklive.com.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The threat of a U.S. government shutdown later this week is receding after Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill struck a deal that could see votes taking place in Congress later on Wednesday. Meanwhile, President Biden is working overtime in a bid to try and secure the passage of two mainstays of his legislative agenda, a $1.2 trillion infrastructure deal and a broader spending package. He's facing opposition from some members of his own party, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who has told left-wing Democrats to vote against the infrastructure proposal. At the White House, Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
The president has been clear about his commitment to getting both pieces of legislation passed, both of them through. So right now what we're navigating through and we're working through is how we can get agreement, of course, 50 votes in the Senate on a reconciliation package. That's what we're discussing here. We have to see what senators are comfortable with and if everybody involved is comfortable with it to get enough votes to get it across the finish line. And ultimately, our objective here is to work towards unity, work towards an agreement. That's in process.
The Old Bailey in London has heard that Sarah Everard, the 33-year-old marketing executive whose murder shocked the UK, believed that she was being arrested by her killer. Police officer Wayne Cousins, facing sentencing for murder, used his Metropolitan Police identity badge to abduct her, accusing her of breaching COVID-19 regulations. Lawyer Harriet Wistrich is the director of the Centre for Women's Justice.
There needs to be radical change. We've seen the government making various comments and pledges, and we have seen the police recognising also the horror, but we still have a huge problem in relation to misogyny and violence against women generally, and the failure of the criminal justice system to tackle those problems.
Japan is getting a new prime minister. Former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida won his ruling LDP's leadership election. FSN's Phoebe Amoroso in our Tokyo bureau says Mr. Kishida is going to have his hands full.
The number one priority will absolutely be how to restart socioeconomic activities after the pandemic. Now, no part of Japan is under a state of emergency or quasi-state of emergency. He's offered a stimulus package worth around 30 trillion yen. He also says that he would not raise the sales tax, which is at 10%, for about a decade, as this would put too much of a burden on people.
Another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct by US officials. Scientists are warning of an extinction crisis, with flora and fauna now disappearing at 1,000 times the normal historical rate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN. With FSN Spotlight, I'm Simon Marks. Today, climate change activist Greta Thunberg's evisceration of US President Joe Biden, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and other world leaders in a speech designed to pave the way for the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow later this year. She was speaking at the Youth for Climate conference in Milan and said there have been far too many promises made and far too little progress delivered on the path to combating climate change.
This is not about some expensive, politically correct green act of bunny hugging or blah blah blah. Build back better, blah blah blah. Green economy, blah blah blah. Net zero, blah blah blah. Climate neutral, blah blah blah. This is all we hear from our so-called leaders. Words that sound great, but so far has led to no action. Our hopes and dreams drown in their empty words and promises. Of course, we need constructive dialogue, but they've now had 30 years of blah, 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 and where has that led us?
Milan Summit designed to allow a younger generation of activists to communicate directly with policymakers. Some of the ideas they're hammering out together are expected to make it on to the COP26 agenda. Alok Sharma, the president of COP26, appointed by Prime Minister Boris Johnson, evinced no emotion as he watched Greta Thunberg deliver her critique. The main news again, the threat of a US government shutdown is receding after Democrats and Republicans struck a deal that could see votes taking place in Congress later on Wednesday. President Biden is trying to secure the passage of two mainstays of his legislative agenda amid opposition from some of his fellow Democrats, and another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct. There's more from us on Twitter at Feature Story. And that is the latest Feature Story news. Simon Marks reporting.
If you're just tuning in, a horrific accident. Dozens are dead and hundreds more injured after the Coors Light party train crashed in Pratt, Kansas. The train was barreling through a field on its way to liven up a boring, overheated barbecue when something went wrong. Partiers were thrown hundreds of feet from the train as the frost-powered locomotive careened through bystanders at its normal speed of over 27,000 miles per hour. Rescue crews are struggling to get close to the crash. The Rocky Mountain frost radiating from the downed silver bullet is flash freezing survivors' bodies as they try to escape the wreckage, and the OJ's hit song Love Train is looping at deafening levels. No word yet on the cause of the accident, but investigators are focusing now on the fact that the train weighs 400 million tons and was not on rails. Coors Light has released the following statement, quote, Coors Light regrets any loss of life caused by the Coors Light party train's raw, frosty power. Please continue to enjoy Coors Light. We'll have more on this story as it develops.
This is the Onion News Network.
Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, where you're invited to call in, take control of the airwaves, and talk about whatever is important to you. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line for you to do that. That's 603-283-6160. And with you tonight, it's Aria,
Riley,
and Nikki.
And we have a story coming up about this new world religion sort of thing. And it's not what you would think. When I heard that, I was like, okay, so is it an article about the state religion or the new religion that is science? And I saw the science as a religion thing coming a number of years ago.
Yeah.
And really, I think it started with string theory, which is not worth describing, but it's basically impossible to test, and they still have not even figured out a way they could possibly experiment to see whether or not string theory is even valid. But yet the overwhelming majority of particle physicists are string theorists, despite that there's no experimental evidence to support it whatsoever. But then you have the left idolizing people like Bill Nye and Neil deGrasse Tyson, and the other one, Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
I saw an image of Neil deGrasse Tyson once with an actual sun behind his head, just like you see in ancient artwork, because for those who don't remember, the halo is based off Egyptian sun disk, and if you look at early Christian art, Jesus always had a sun behind his head, and it was because of those sun disks, and that's exactly what that image was. It was absolutely religious in nature. So it's not surprising to me to see that science is settled. It's science. Yep. It's unquestionable, but science questions science.
Yes, the scientific method is a method of questioning
Yes, and experimenting and confirming those experiments. There's been no experiments to determine whether or not lockdowns work, and all of the evidence supports the idea that they didn't.
Yep, and when you have the state controlling what the science is, what the truth is, then science might as well be a state religion.
Or when the state has their own
What's the
scientists with a narrative.
Yeah, exactly.
Not to mention all of the scientific funding they do. They'll fund your project if you have a certain result. If you're doing a project to prove that wearing masks don't reduce the spread of a virus, the government is not going to give you money to fund that research. We would say, hey, I want to prove that, the mask mandates worked. The government will absolutely give that scientist money.
And we actually covered a story on the show a few weeks ago about they were finally studying the women's menstrual cycle changes, and they admitted in the article that they were just doing the study to prove that the vaccination was safe and that it wasn't going to produce changes. So it's like you already decided what the results of the study was going to be before you even did it.
Yep. But let's go to the phones. We have Vernon calling from New Orleans. Vernon, you're on Free Talk Live. And I've got you turned all the way down. Go ahead, Vernon. Are you with us? Going once. Try calling back during the break. There may be an issue with the phones. I'm not sure everything should be working, but evidently not. So anyway, this New World religion, it's some sort of weird merging of Christianity and Islam?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Wouldn't that just be Islam?
No, well,
because I used to do a show called Call to Freedom that was founded by two Muslims, and one of the things I learned about it is that they do consider Christ to be a prophet, not the Son of God, and a great prophet, but Islam is a continuation of Christianity and reveres the same prophets in general, just like Christianity is a continuation of Judaism and reveres the same prophets.
So I'm assuming that that's why they're able to kind of come together so they're calling it the Abrahamic Family House.
Interesting.
So it's a one world religion headquarters.
It doesn't sound like a cult at all.
Yeah. Right? Exactly. So it's a one world religion headquarters that's set to open in 2022. The headquarters will be called the Abrahamic Family House and is being built on an island in the Middle Eastern city of Abu Dhabi.
Are we sure this isn't a cult?
It seems like it.
They got this island.
It looks like a resort. If you look at the photo of the where it is, it looks like a resort. It does not look. It's like these big, giant, cube-shaped structures. They don't even look like any sort of...
Is Jane going to make jams and jellies there?
Maybe. Probably.
It sounds like a cult.
It really does.
Being a Christian doesn't prevent a place from being a cult, as we learned in Waco. But a cult is really just an unpopular or not very well-known sect of a religion.
Right.
So they're trying to sell it as like we're all coming together and it's going to be peaceful. But to me, it kind of is sounding like some new world order type of stuff. And they're like this is kind of the beginning of that. Like it could be a great thing that people are all coming together and they're going to get along. But more than likely, based on history, I don't think that that's what's going to happen.
Something's going to happen to scare everybody there.
Yeah, so the headquarters is being done in collaboration with Pope Francis and Sunni Muslim leader, I am not going to even try to pronounce that name, after they both signed a global peace convent called the Document of Human Fraternity for World Peace. The stated purpose of the Abrahamic Family House is to bring understanding and tolerance among the faiths.
Well, I totally understand why they would do this. In 2015, roughly 4 billion of the world's population were either Christian or Muslims.
Yeah.
So that's roughly 2/3 of the world's population. And I imagine it's still about 2/3 of the world's population, just those two religions alone.
So religion is a very strange thing to me because it's this idea that you have to believe something in order to be saved from some arbitrary afterlife.
The Christian religion and the Abrahamic religions in general, they were the foundation for statism, right? And that's why I'm a Satanist, and that's why we look to Lucifer as an example, because God came along, he created people. He said he denied them free will, first of all. He said, obey me because I'm the authority and I said so. And if you don't obey me, I'm going to punish you.
That's not how I was taught things from Christianity's perspective. I was taught that God...
But that's how it actually happened.
Yeah.
According to the biblical teachings. But what were you taught?
I was taught that God allowed us to have free will, but Satan wanted to usurp our free will.
No. Well, whether or not we had free will is unclear, but humans definitively, according to the book of Genesis, did not have the ability to determine good from evil.
Until they partook of the fruit of knowledge of good and evil,
and
at least.
If you don't know the difference between good and evil, do you really have free will? You can't be judged if you don't know the difference between good and evil, because if you don't know that it's good to push someone out of the way of a moving vehicle, and it's evil to be the moving vehicle that is going to run this person over, you got to remember, according to the biblical story, Adam and Eve had no ability to recognize the difference between running someone over and, giving them a gift on their birthday. There was no concept of morality whatsoever.
Right.
And then Lucifer came along and said, hey, you're just slaves here. If you eat this, you will be free and you will be able to make decisions by yourself. So Lucifer was the original anarchist.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yahweh was the original authoritarian, and it prepares people mentally to just accept arbitrary rule. Now we have governments saying, obey us or be punished, and because we're the governments, we're the ones in charge here. We created society. We gave you your freedoms. The exact same thing that Yahweh said in the Old Testament. I created you. I gave you all of these things. Obey me because I'm the one in charge here. And if you don't obey me, you'll be punished.
Exactly. So first, Abu Dhabi is part of the UAE, where it is illegal to be Christian and conversion from Islam is prohibited. So that's kind of a big deal that they're making this Abrahamic family house in Abu Dhabi where you can't be Christian and you can't be anything except for Islamic.
I'm surprised to hear that.
I didn't know that either.
I thought the United Arab Emirates was a pretty popular tourist spot, and I thought it was one of the more liberal of the Islamic countries.
That's what I thought, but I guess according to this article,
it's illegal to be Christian, and it's illegal to convert from Islam. That's hard for me as an American to even understand.
It really is. I mean, we as Americans live in a country where religious plurality is pretty common, although different Christians are going to debate on who's Christian or not, and it's really silly.
It is, and it's not as religiously plural as we like to think. It's slightly better today, but a person running for president, if they say anything other than Christian, they're not going to win the presidency.
Oh yeah, Mitt Romney was lambasted for not being quote-unquote Christian.
Yeah.
So I misread the article wrong. I just want to correct that really quickly. It's not illegal to be Christian. It's illegal for Christians to try to convert other people into Christianity as they tend to do. So that makes more sense.
More about this coming up, 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless free market non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important and are free to pursue their projects so long as they respect the property of others? There are many people just like you that are discovering freeprivatecities.com. Their social media links are at the upper right of the page at freeprivatecities.com. All skill levels will be needed when the first of the Free Private Cities opens. It's sooner than you think. Stop arguing and build. freeprivatecities.com.
Breaking weather news. Belize is sunny and around 82 degrees every day this week.
What's the forecast for your life? If current politics and economic prospects are cramping your freedom, escape to the tropics. ECI Development has affordable second homes for you to own or rent in Belize and other tropical countries. Places with stable governments and growing economies. Secure your freedom now. To find out more, send an email to ftl@ecidevelopment.com.
After a devastating war, the alien visitors were driven back, and their willing human collaborators were left behind to face the music. When Emma Jean Anderson's ex-lover brings her from prison, Nathan Foster and his 14-year-old nephew Ben are tasked with bringing the pair to justice. An easy enough job until they discover something is inside Emma Jean, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance. The Family Business by Mike Coopery from BaneBooks.com.
Join liberty-minded voluntarists, anarchists, and libertarians from June 27th through July 3rd for the 6th annual Fork Fest at Rogers Campground in the beautiful White Mountains of New Hampshire. Fork Fest is a fork of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which sold out for the first time in 2021. Fork Fest takes place the week after Pork Fest, but Fork Fest is decentralized, which means that there's no ticket cost and no one is in charge. All you have to do to join the fun is reserve your camping site, RV site, or motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. There's no better place to celebrate Independence Day than around other freedom-loving activists in the Shire. You can find out more at the unofficial website, forkfest.party. You can also connect with other attendees on the Forkfest Telegram and Matrix chat rooms, as well as the Forkfest Forum. You can find links to those at forkfest.party. We hope to see you there. Forkfest.party. The LRN.FM social media channels have been revamped. We've eliminated Facebook and focused on other platforms like Twitter and Mastodon, the decentralized alternative to Twitter. On our accounts, you'll find posts from multiple LRN.FM show hosts together in one place. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.lrn.fm, or better yet, move to the decentralized Mastodon social media platform at toot.lrn.fm, toot.lrn.fm. I think you'll like it.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, where last year we told you about Intercoin, which can help any business and organization launch their own currency or raise money using their own token. Now Intercoin.org has launched worldwide, so if there's a token you want to launch or an app you want to build, go to Intercoin.org, enter your email, and the team there will get in touch with you and learn about your needs. And while you're there, if you want, get some Intercoins for yourself. That's intercoin.org, Intercoin.org. With you tonight is Arya, Nikki, and Riley, and we're making sure that we go out of our way to make our conservative listeners angry by railing against Christianity. Not really, just the incorrect interpretation of Christianity that most people seem to have in their heads.
Just the corrupted version of Christianity that people have in their heads anyway.
Yeah,
and
but
if you disagree with us, feel free to call in.
603-283-6160. That's 603-283-6160.
Unfortunately, I miss Jet. Jet should call again, but like he would call and we would argue some of these points, and it just never ended well for him, and then he just sort of stopped doing it. But that's because, for whatever reason, atheists tend to know the Bible much better than Christians do.
Isn't that so ironic? That's so true.
It's so interesting that...
Well, most Christians have never read the Bible.
I think once you know it inside and out, you're like, oh, no, can't do this anymore. And that's probably why, like, once people really know the Bible, they're like, no, I'm an atheist now. I can't do that.
Yeah, Yahweh kills so many people in the Bible that when I ran for sheriff, someone actually sent me a Bible in the mail, which is a really cool gesture, and I used it to do some satanic Bible studies that were really fun. Oh, wow. And I'm going to resume those at some point. But I just opened it once I saw it and realized what it was. I just opened to a random page and just happened to be there, Yahweh smiting 80,000 Assyrians. just on a random page. Of course it was. If you open any page of the Bible to an Old Testament page, you're more than likely going to find Yahweh slaughtering someone or killing someone. Like the prophet Elijah, some kids made fun of him being bald, so Yahweh sent a, quote, she-bear to maul and kill the children for making fun of this dude for being bald.
Yeah, that's really strange. So
yeah, and it's like, yeah, no, I don't think God did that. The God that I want to believe in would not do something like that. Would be like, dude, that is an overreaction. Will you take a Xanax? Chill.
So I was raised to believe that there is an afterlife, and within Mormonism, the afterlife is not the end, that you can have a chance to change your life around even after death. And so someone once told me that God is just putting these people in timeout by just killing them.
Which is a reasonable interpretation. Islam's interpretation, or one particular sect, I can't remember, I did a show with this dude for like 2.5 years. Why can't I remember the name of the belief system that he had within Islam, where hell was something that basically you inflicted upon yourself out of your guilty conscience. You like beat yourself up for some period of time until you had purged yourself of it and were then allowed into the afterlife. But the concept of hell doesn't even exist within the Bible. It refers to a bottomless pit and a lake of fire, and it makes it very clear that souls are destroyed when they're cast into the bottomless pit. So it's like the Mount Doom where the ring was created. That's where they also have to be destroyed, and that's where they get destroyed. You don't get tortured for all eternity. Never mind that. Who's going to be doing the torturing? Do they think the demons, as they're portrayed in Christianity, would get off on that?
They would.
And the bottomless pit, in contrast, is reserved strictly for Lucifer. The only person who's ever going to get thrown into it, according to the Bible, is Lucifer. So there is no negative or punishment afterlife for Christianity. You just cease to exist. And presumably they argue that if you're in heaven, you're going to forget about the people who were sent into hell. That way you don't feel bad about it or something like that.
I don't know.
It makes sense. If their soul ceases to exist, then it never existed and it's wiped from your memory. But still, I don't, something about it just always seems weird to me. Never mind the whole idea as they present it is that, you spend all of your time worshiping God. Like, how bad is this dude's ego that he created an entire an entire universe that is incomprehensible inside, picked this one planet and said, this is where I'm going to do it.
And the question,
all of those other planets are not good enough. This is the one that's good enough.
Another thought-provoking question we could ask is, how do we know this God is even worthy of worship?
Well, Yahweh certainly is not. I mean, he sent a bear to kill children for making fun of Elijah for being bald. I couldn't possibly worship a God who was that immoral to murder children and to allow things like the Holocaust and things like that. The part of the whole Christian mythology is that Yahweh is in control of everything. Well, that means Yahweh allowed the Holocaust to happen. I tend to think that if there was a benevolent God who was actually in control of things versus one who gave us free will and said, good luck, you're going to mess up.
Enjoy it.
You're a child. You're going to put your hand on the stove and get burned, but you'll learn an important lesson. And that's just the way it's got to be, versus Yahweh, who is the one who makes you put your hand on the stove and then says, yeah, that hurts, doesn't it? Don't do that again. Oh, wait, I made you do that. Well, I better not make you do that again. It's just so warped and confusing.
It's backwards. And it's a contradiction for something to be all good, all knowing, and all powerful. You can't be all three.
No, you can't.
No. I mean, even all powerful itself is an oxymoron.
Yeah.
And it's demonstrated in a really stupid question, but it's still valid. Can God microwave a burrito so hot that he can't eat it?
That's kind of
I love that one.
It is a silly question, but it highlights the absurd paradox that is omnipotence. But Christians, they just glaze right over these obvious contradictions, these obvious things that cannot exist, and they just carry on with their lives, never thinking twice about it.
So going back to the Abrahamic Family House article, they point out that the Pope represents Roman Catholicism, where Christians are free to convert to Islam, but the citizens of Abu Dhabi are not free to choose Christ, which is really ironic that it's going to be in Abu Dhabi, but they can only worship at the Islam building.
So the Pope is okay with this? He's on board with it?
Yeah, it was him and the Sunni Muslim leader.
I think it's
Sunni.
So
why would the Pope be on board with this?
To promote, well, Pope Francis is like the woke Pope. Like, he also says you can like be gay and have abortions. So
yeah,
it doesn't really surprise me too much.
He's been an interesting figure in Catholicism.
Yeah, it doesn't. So he's been doing a lot of things that I'm assuming most Catholics and Christians would not approve of, but
I mean,
he's their leader, so
if he wants to tell people they can be gay and get abortions and all that,
I think it's cool.
Yeah, great, dude. I mean, none of that's really going to be supported by the Bible, but you have that little thing that says as below, so above, which means that the Pope, whatever the Pope decrees, supposedly becomes biblical law or whatever, if you're a Catholic at least.
Yeah. So perhaps like the Abrahamic family house that promises tolerance and understanding, the UAE Constitution also guarantees freedom of religion in accordance with established customs. But the devil is in the details. Those certain practices, like conversion from Islam, are directly prohibited. The penal code for the UAE defers to Sharia law, which strictly prohibits converting to Christianity, so it just doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't, but there's more of this coming up. 603-283-6160. You're welcome to weigh in. What do you think about the Abrahamic family house? It's Free Talk Live.
Carl Watner, longtime proponent of a voluntary society, died last December. You may have seen his articles published on his website, voluntarist.com, in his newsletter, The Voluntarist, the Mises Institute, or elsewhere over the last 40 years. His newest book, I Must Speak Out, Volume 2, The Best of the Voluntarist, is now available via Liberty Under Attack Publications. This 430-page second volume spans the years of 2000 through 2020 and includes articles by Carl Watner, Hans Hermann Hoppe, Carl Hess, Benjamin Tucker, George H. Smith, Lysander Spooner, Pete Eyre, Joyce Brand, and many others. I Must Speak Out is for the newly initiated, the veteran voluntarist, or anywhere in between. Buy the book now at libertyunderattack.com/voluntarist. For more great content on building a voluntary society and for Carl's extensive archives, check out voluntarist.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Simon Marks. The threat of a U.S. government shutdown later this week is receding after Democrats and Republicans on Capitol Hill struck a deal that could see votes taking place in Congress later on Wednesday. Meanwhile, President Biden is working overtime in a bid to try and secure the passage of two mainstays of his legislative agenda, a $1.2 trillion infrastructure deal and a broader spending package. He's facing opposition from some members of his own party, including Senator Bernie Sanders, who has told left-wing Democrats to vote against the infrastructure proposal. At the White House, Press Secretary Jen Psaki.
The president has been clear about his commitment to getting both pieces of legislation passed, both of them through. So right now what we're navigating through and we're working through is how we can get agreement, of course, 50 votes in the Senate on a reconciliation package. That's what we're discussing here. We have to see what senators are comfortable with and if everybody involved is comfortable with it to get enough votes to get it across the finish line. And ultimately, our objective here is to work towards unity, work towards an agreement. That's in process.
The Old Bailey in London has heard that Sarah Everard, the 33-year-old marketing executive whose murder shocked the UK, believed that she was being arrested by her killer. Police officer Wayne Cousins, facing sentencing for murder, used his Metropolitan Police identity badge to abduct her, accusing her of breaching COVID-19 regulations. Lawyer Harriet Wistrich is the director of the Centre for Women's Justice.
There needs to be radical change. We've seen the government making various comments and pledges, and we have seen the police recognising also the horror, but we still have a huge problem in relation to misogyny and violence against women generally and the failure of the criminal justice system to tackle those problems.
Japan is getting a new prime minister. Former Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida won his ruling LDP's leadership election. FSN's Phoebe Amoroso in our Tokyo bureau says Mr. Kishida is going to have his hands full.
The number one priority will absolutely be how to restart socioeconomic activities after the pandemic. Now, no part of Japan is under a state of emergency or quasi-state of emergency. He's offered a stimulus package worth around 30 trillion yen. He also says that he would not raise the sales tax, which is at 10%, for about a decade, as this would put too much of a burden on people.
Another 23 species, including one of the world's biggest woodpeckers, have been declared extinct by US officials. Scientists are warning of an extinction crisis, with flora and fauna now disappearing at 1,000 times the normal historical rate. From bureaus worldwide, this is FSN.
Yep, we still do email. Drop your email address in the entry box at freetalklive.com, and you'll be kept in the loop with Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live. You can weigh in. 603-283-6160. That's the call-in line if you want to share your opinions on whatever's important to you, or talk about the New World religion, the cult-like sounding Abrahamic family house.
Yes.
Which, I don't know about you, but to me, it just sounds like a cult.
It seems like it has the same ring as the People's Temple of Jonestown.
Or the Manson family house.
Yeah.
In general,
that's why it sounds like a cult. Yeah.
In general, I think if you're doing something, you probably don't want to include the word family in the name, because that just kind of makes it sound weird and cult-like.
Yeah, it really does.
Abrahamic family house is a little bit too close to the Manson family for me, but I mean, it's also the Abrahamic family of religion, so I understand why they did it. I just think it was a silly decision. But we have Vernon calling back from New Orleans. Vernon, you're on Free Talk Live.
Hi, I just wanted to offer my account of the terrible COVID vaccine side effects that I experienced, if that's okay.
Sure. When did you get your second vaccine? Or your second
Thursday. Last Thursday.
Okay, so
And
about 6 days
I
ago?
was actually being dramatic. I had no side effects at all on either the first or second shot, and I totally support personal choice, and I think that nobody should be mandated to do it, but I just wanted to share that I was very anxious. I was very, worried. My reasoning was because I live with an 87-year-old grandmother, and I did my own research. I read both opinions, and I came up with my own decision. And again, I fully support that, it should not be mandated. And I think that's the real issue here.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, none of us object to
mandate. It may
someone
not be-
choosing to get the COVID-19 vaccine.
Yeah, I don't object to that. If you want to get the COVID-19 vaccine, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you for choosing that.
Let me ask you this. What about a personal choice of wearing a mask? Not the mandates, but if I personally chose to wear a mask, that's a different story, right?
No,
it's the same idea.
It's the same story.
And
it's your choice.
When I went on all of those leftist podcasts last year, I kept saying that repeatedly because Ian and I both, we just got lambasted in the media for suing the city of Keene and Governor Sununu over the mask mandates, and was like, look, this is about the fact that it's a mandate. It's the government forcing you to do it. If you want to wear a mask, that's fine. If you want to get vaccinated, that's fine. I literally don't care. It's your body. Put what you want on it.
Exactly.
I literally don't even care if people walk around naked, like do whatever you want. I don't care if you wear a mask.
Absolutely.
Well, for those that have chosen or will choose to get the vaccine, I always thought, you're going to have terrible side effects. I had more side effects from the tetanus vaccine than I did. The tetanus vaccine made me very lightheaded. My arm was really sore. I didn't feel well, but with the COVID, I got the Pfizer and man, nothing else. I did space mine about 8 weeks apart, just based on some of the research that I had read personally. Okay. So maybe that has something to do with it. But anyway, thank you all for letting me share with you all that today.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you.
I appreciate hearing, other sides of the story.
Sure. I mean, most of the people I know didn't really have any sort of damaging side effects. I don't know anyone who got it and wasn't sick as a result of it for a few days, but that's what vaccines are supposed to do. But then again, the COVID-19 vaccines don't contain the inactive virus.
Yeah.
So why would they get sick and develop COVID-19 symptoms if there's no actual COVID-19 in it? And I've never actually thought about that question until now.
The mRNA is changing. It's doing like genetic editing.
Yeah, but
so it's producing spike proteins to flag it, and it, as a result, it kind of gives you mimic symptoms.
Okay.
So, I mean, from my understanding, I think most people that got it had no or little symptoms. But I also think it's important for us to be, one, studying it, and two, letting people know that there are possible side effects that are pretty serious.
Yeah, they keep saying, the vaccines are perfectly safe. And I just look, they used to say thing about thalidomide, nicotine, cigarettes were perfectly safe. Asbestos was perfectly safe.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something else that they thought was perfectly safe. I don't know if you guys are aware of a group called the Downwinders, but back in the 1950s in the western United States, they were doing nuclear testing in the Nevada desert, and people in southern Utah were told, oh, it's safe, you can go play outside and have a good time. But unfortunately, people who have been exposed to this radiation from the nuclear testing have cancer or have children with birth defects or things like that. So we don't know what's going to happen with this thing. It could be nothing for all we know, but at least it should not be mandated at gunpoint.
I mean, perfectly safe is always the phrase that sets off my alarms because nothing is perfectly safe. The electricity in my house isn't perfectly safe. And I know when I plug something in that I'm not going to get electrocuted, but it's not perfectly safe. It could burn the house down.
It could.
Yeah, it could.
And I wouldn't, see it coming.
Yeah. Neither would I.
And one thing I definitely didn't see coming is this coalescence of the Abrahamic religions. And I noticed they exclude Judaism here.
No, there is a synagogue.
Okay, so they're creating this sort of synagogue, mosque, church thing.
Yes. So it was because Pope Francis and the Sunni Muslim leader were the ones that have done the collaboration to create this. Okay. But they do include a synagogue. So they have a church, a synagogue, and I lost my place and I'm forgetting what the Muslim temple of worship is called.
And this is happening at the United Arab Emirates, where it's currently illegal for Christians to proselytize and attempt to convert people from Islam. And it's illegal for a Muslim to convert to Christianity.
Yes, so it's very interesting that they're doing this. It's almost like imagine living there and wanting to be a Christian, and then you kind of have this building taunting you almost, like, oh, I wish I could worship there, but I legally can't.
Yeah.
So it's almost like a tourist location maybe, where other people because you can still worship Christianity, but you just can't if you're a citizen. So it's really strange to me. So the headquarters will have 3 buildings, one building each representing a mosque, a church, and a synagogue. However, the church is not permitted to have a cross on the building as a method of identifying it, as it is illegal to display a Christian cross on a building in the UAE.
I can't believe the Pope agreed to this. It's a place where
surprised.
Christians
I'm
are
really
actually
surprised.
being oppressed.
It's really an interesting show of virtue signaling, I guess, is the correct word, and it's really crazy.
But they're oppressing Christians there.
I know.
Yeah. And the Pope is like, yes, we'll sign on to this as you oppress my people.
It's silly.
Yeah.
It's shocking to hear that from the Pope.
So though it is not usually enforced, teaching that Jesus is the only God is considered to be an act of insulting Allah or the Prophet Muhammad, and offenders can be subject to imprisonment for 5 or more years and substantial fines, and Christians may be deported.
So if you're a Christian, you basically have to keep it to yourself.
Yeah, basically. So to add to the confusion of bringing understanding and tolerance, the Sunni Muslim leader, who is widely touted as a moderate Muslim, strongly believes that Muslims who convert from Islam to any other religion, including Christianity, should be killed. So he's like a moderate person, and he's still like, yeah, if you're a Christian, you should just be killed.
Wow.
So that's super peaceful and super tolerant.
I know.
To be
Super
clear,
tolerant.
he's saying if you convert from Islam to Christianity, you should be killed, which isn't a whole lot better, but he's not
really
just saying we should kill Christians.
It's really sad to me that people who lose or convert to a different religion are deemed horrible within Islam's eyes. And
But that's true of Christianity as well.
It really is. I know that within some Christian groups that if you choose to leave the religion, the family is going to shun you. They're going to treat you like an outcast. They're not going to treat you well, and it's really sad. People only be treated well if they choose to not support your family's religion. It's that simple.
It is, but they're firm believers, and now they think you're going to hell.
I know. It's tragic.
They act like they're saying all of this out of love. Of course, it's because we love you, but we're not going to have anything to do with you.
It's not love. It's not love.
What are your thoughts? 603-283-6160. There's more coming up. It's Free Talk Live.
A congressman recently revealed that legislation totaling 2,900 pages and involving more than $1 trillion was available to members of Congress for less than 48 hours to study and consider. That's over 60 pages of legislation per hour. Do you think anyone read the entire bill? I'm Jim Babka with DownsizeDC.org. Consider a proposal buried in a 3,200-page, $388 billion bill, which would have empowered committee chairmen or their agents to examine Americans' tax returns. When this horrible provision came to light, no one claimed to know how it got into the bill. One congressman questioned said, "I didn't write it, I didn't approve it, I wasn't even consulted." If your attorney represented you this way, he might be disbarred. But this is how Congress represents you every day. That's why DownsizeDC.org has created the Read the Bills Act. You can force Congress to read their bills before they pass them at DownsizeDC.org.
Is oral health important to you? If you don't like your own teeth, fresh breath, or kissing people, then by all means stop listening. Several years ago, I met Jessica Armand, founder and CEO of My Magic Mud, and I became passionate about the product that she created and never want to live without it. It's clinically proven to whiten teeth, but I find it does much more. They want you to love My Magic Mud as much as I do, so they're giving you a money-back guarantee plus 20% off. Go to mymagicmud.com and use coupon code FTL20 at checkout. mymagicmud.com, FTL20.
There are lots of ways to listen to Free Talk Live. Our podcast has been around since podcasts began, and now the FTL feed is loaded with content besides our full show archives. Did you know that we make it easy for you to customize your podcast subscriptions? We have different feeds, one that includes only our full shows, one with just the Daily Digest, and our main feed that includes everything. You decide what you listen to. It's quick and easy to customize your feeds at feeds.freetalklive.com. That's feeds.freetalklive.com. Why did you move to the Shire?
I moved here to the Shire because there's other people around who take liberty just as seriously as I do.
I moved to the Shire because I saw videos of people challenging authority and thought that I could get support myself. It called to me, like, do this, right now.
I wanted to be around people like me who got it, and once I got here, I knew there was nowhere else that I wanted to be.
I've always wanted to change the world, so I moved to the Shire to join people who were actually working towards doing the same thing.
The people here are awesome, loving, and positive. It was for the adventure and for the feeling of something important is happening here, and I just wanted to come to sort of be part of that.
Visit ShireSociety.com to read and sign the Shire Society Declaration and learn the reasons why, if you love liberty, you should immigrate to the Shire. Plus, connect with others via the forum at ShireSociety.com. That's ShireSociety.com. What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer-term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, and if you're sick of big tech shutting you down, because I'm constantly getting banned from Twitter, our Free Talk Live YouTube channel is constantly getting suspended from YouTube. If you're sick of all of that, check out social.freetalklive.com. We got sick of it, so we went and created our own social media server. It's built on Mastodon, which is a decentralized federated system, which means basically that we are connected to other servers in this Fediverse, or whatever the terminology is. And I don't understand how it works because I don't need to understand how it works. It's really simple to use, though, and it's very similar to Twitter. And there, no one can censor you. Social.freetalklive.com is the link for that. Definitely check it out.
I'm on social.freetalklive.com, so come check me out. Just kidding.
That's social.freetalklive.com. You are on there. I'm on there, not actively using it, but I am on there. Most of the people on the show are actively on there to some extent or another. Social.freetalklive.com is the place for that. But let's go to the phones. We have Dustin calling from Kansas. Dustin, you're on Free Talk Live.
Yeah, I was calling about some eerie government conspiracies and figuring that the best thing out of the shutdown coming up is Tea Party Incorporation. This government, Thomas Jefferson and John Quincy Adams wrote the philosophy of Nasserschmidt. That's a similar
what?
That's like Nazi mint. The politicians are all the male and female are all in adultery affairs, and then with the allowance of the officers or the politicians, a coleslaw law about the government employees getting less law. There's also Second Bill of Rights. Second Bill of Rights means criminal threat of martial law. The firearms only definition.
Dustin, hold on. Dustin, stop talking. What second Bill of Rights are you talking about?
Of the Constitution.
There's only one Bill of Rights.
Definition. The firearms only definition is to kill living life forms.
Okay, so you meant the Second Amendment.
Or martial law. No, Second Bill of Rights. Right to bear arms?
That's the Second Amendment. The Bill of Rights is the
Bill of Rights.
No, that's the Second
Amendment.
Amendment.
We're quibbling over this, but it doesn't say anything about martial law at the least within the Bill of Rights.
That's the firearms only definition is to kill living life forms.
Who's using that definition?
It's basic. It's a modern understanding.
But it's not true. I mean, plenty of people have used firearms and never killed anything that's living, like just target practice.
You're practicing to kill.
No, you're practicing to be a better marksman. That doesn't mean you're ever going to actually shoot someone or that you would shoot someone.
Target is also a sport, too. You can target shoot as a sport and never intend to kill somebody.
What are you doing? Aiming for the kill?
You're aiming for the clay pigeon.
Yeah.
You understand that? Well, to go on, this government shutdown.
Okay, so you're just going to skip. You're being wrong. Got it.
The strip clubs. The females are forced to work naked in strip clubs.
I have never met a strip club employee who is like, I'm being forced to work here.
On the pole?
Yes.
A female on the pole?
She chose that job.
Yeah, they chose that job.
She has no other choice.
Oh, that's not true.
I don't know. I know a lot of strippers, and they all seem to like it. So
the way Social Security salaries start at $600 about the embezzlement or the concentration effort, like concentration camps, the mentally ill are forced group homes, and then unemployment benefits was getting an extra $600 every week.
I don't know if it's him or me, but one of us has had a stroke in the last few minutes. You said you wanted to talk about the government shutdown and conspiracies. So where does the conspiracy come in here?
That's the disabled concentration camp about about being forced in group homes and just concentrating on having $600?
How do they accomplish this?
Social Security salary?
How do they accomplish this with a government shutdown?
The ways. Don't you think the government would be better off on incorporating or changing the government's identity and laws of the land? Nobody remembers a paragraph of the Constitution.
Plenty of people do.
No judge remembers the whole Constitution.
Oh, they went to fifth grade and had to memorize the preamble just like the rest of us did. I'm sure some of them still remember it.
The best thing is a few Bill of Rights and we the people.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Just a second Bill of Rights. I mean, why even stop there? Let's just make 23 of them. 23 bills of rights.
Let's do it.
Even better.
Don't you think a new governmental law of the land, rather than the philosophy that no lawman can uphold the Constitution?
I'd rather no Constitution and no government. But I don't understand how you're connecting this to the government shutdowns and martial law. Do you know what martial law is?
Yeah, that's to kill. That's to kill when any road rage or the
Dustin,
terms of
Dustin, do you know what martial law
only
is?
Definition.
We're not talking about firearms at this point.
It's a consent to kill.
Do you know what martial law is? Dustin, will you stop saying that? So, okay, that's
what I know.
That's what your understanding of martial.
I know.
It's a consent to kill.
From the government about any suspicious character.
Martial law is when they use the military to enforce the law domestically. That's what martial law is.
The terms, there is no laws in the Constitution.
No, there is no law at all in the Constitution.
The police officers don't know if the charges are going to stick in court because it has no Ten Commandments, do not do.
Yes, that is what the Bill of Rights is. Yes, the Bill of Rights is the do not do within the Constitution. It's the do not do these things.
What the right to bear arms and the police officers that having no knowledge of their court charges sticking, and
that's not the Bill of Rights, though.
No, that's not relevant. Dustin, I can't take any more of this. Thank you so much for the call tonight. Speaking of cops, though, they're apparently concerned that people are going to be giving away edibles.
Oh my goodness. Are they again?
In children's candy. Yes.
Free edibles. Yay. I can't wait.
I'm excited, man. I love edibles. They're great.
And this crap happens every single year. Here's Fred Heron saying, unfortunately, there's a lot of sick and evil people out there. This is the world we live in.
Oh my goodness.
I love it when they put like the ecstasy pills and they're like, watch out for these. Nobody's giving your kid free ecstasy.
No one's going to give your kids free edibles
People
either.
pay a lot of money for that stuff. Nobody's giving
edibles
it for
are
free.
Cheaper, but yeah, ecstasy's expensive. No one's giving that away for free. Except maybe at like a festival or something, but they're certainly not giving it to kids.
Yeah, for sure.
Bensalem police reported that officers conducted a traffic stop earlier in September and confiscated what looked like normal candy.
Oh no.
However, the items that looked like Sour Patch candies, Cheetos, and Sweet Tarts all contain THC.
Oh no, the terror.
And they probably said so on their packaging. I mean, candy looks like candy. How are you going to have a THC-infused candy that doesn't look like candy? What do you want it to look like?
Exactly.
And
what
normally those packaging too, like they put like THC in big letters with like giant pot leaves. Like it's pretty obvious that it's not regular candy.
Bensalem police said the suspect bought the snacks in California and planned to sell them in Pennsylvania. Notice he wasn't planning to distribute them to kids at Halloween.
Exactly. They were planning to sell them to adults, most likely.
Who knows where these things could have wound up, said the police officer. People think they're funny, and they're going to put them in Halloween bags.
Oh my God.
And not realize you could have a child now that could have a reaction to it. Look, and that would be bad. That's a terrible thing to do.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, edibles aren't fun for kids, I'm sure.
But it's just going to put your kid to sleep. So as a parent, it's not the worst thing that could happen.
I don't know if it's going to make them go to sleep necessarily all the
An
time.
adult-sized edible for a child that's actually of trick-or-treating age, I think that child is probably going to be passed out.
Made my dog pass out. He woke up stoned.
Oh my goodness!
But
wow.
He's okay.
Parent Tony Harper of Parkwood said she had a hard time differentiating the fake ones from the real things. Hold on. There were no fake ones. There was pot gummies, and then there were regular gummies. And the last time I saw a pot gummy, they were all individually wrapped. I mean, sure, they came in a larger bag, but they were still individually wrapped. The last time I ate a gummy bear, they were not individually wrapped.
Yeah.
But it's been a long time since I ate an edible. But at any rate, no one's giving your kids drugs on Halloween. That's stupid. That's silly. They've been touting this line my entire life, and I have never once seen or heard of it actually
It's just
happening.
a scary story. Just a scary story.
Join us over there at social.freetalklive.com.
Are you tired of governments murdering people around the world? Stop using their money. There is an alternative. Bitcoin is a stateless, free market, non-political currency. Bitcoin cannot be inflated or controlled by any government. By using their money, you are helping the state. Stop doing it. You have an incredible alternative available now. Learn it, use it, spread it. Get started with Bitcoin at bitcoin.com. That's bitcoin.com.
Do you feel like your nation, state, or community no longer holds your values? Have you dreamt of a place where people agree that liberty is important?